Is 6:05 p.m. I'd like to call to order the January 17th, 2023 Waukegan Public School Board of Education Student Achievement Committee meeting. If I can have a roll call, please.
Mr. McBride, Mr. Riddle, Miss Hannah,
Yeah.
Miss Callahan-Wozniak,
Here. And I apologize. Let's restart that. It's Tuesday, January 17th, not November 15th. And I'd like to call to order the Waukegan Public School Board of Education Student Achievement meeting. Now, if we can restart roll call, I apologize.
Mr. McBride,
Here.
Mr. Riddle, Miss Hannah,
Yes.
Miss Callahan-Wozniak,
Here.
Ms. Leguizamo, Ms. Gonzalez,
Here.
President Ewing.
Here. So we do have a quorum, and board members Riddle and Leguizamo did let me know that they would not be able to attend today. So with that, I would like to move on to our first item, approval of meeting minutes. So item 3A from November 15, 2022. Do we have a motion to approve?
I motion.
Motion by Ms. Gonzalez.
Second.
Second by Mr. McBride. Any comments, questions, corrections to the minutes? Yes, ma'am. All right, we have motion and a second. Seeing as there are no questions or comments, all in favor, please signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. I am going to rearrange the agenda. Just two items. Our presentations. I want to move those up. So we have first item 6A, the celebration of D60's 2023 Nationally Board Certified Teacher Achievement. And I apologize. How is sound in the room? I feel like it's really
bad.
low. It's a little fuzzy, and I don't know if everybody can hear us. We can hear you in the room. How is sound online as well? And we are getting a little bit of feedback, but I just want to make sure everybody can hear.
Oh, that's better.
Okay. So, thank you. Good evening. Again, thank you all for coming. Our first item I'd like to ask Good evening, Ms. Valencia, ladies and gentlemen of the board, and members of the community. It is my honor to welcome Waukegan School District 6's National Board Certified Teacher. To attain this most prestigious and recognized professional certification, teachers must demonstrate that they are an expert in their content knowledge.
And I apologize. I am being notified via messages that people online cannot hear.
It's on.
And this is important, so I do want to make sure that everybody can hear.
Testing.
Oh, that's
We're just going to switch the mics out, Deputy Cesario. All right, let's start that over. Thank you so much.
All right. Good evening, Ms. Placencia, ladies and gentlemen of the board, and members of the community. It is my honor to welcome Waukegan School District 60's newest National Board Certified Teacher. To attain this prestigious and most respected professional certification, teachers must demonstrate that they are an expert in their content knowledge, effective practitioners, and they have demonstrated differentiation in instruction and in the learning environment. Our newest NBCT is a Waukegan graduate and a 6th grade ELA teacher at Smith Middle School. As we will be able to see on the next slide, her many contributions demonstrate that she is a leader both within and outside of the classroom. And I am proud to honor Lauren Jimenez Salgado into the small, only 3% of teachers that have attained this certification. So thank you very much.
Amanda, can you get a picture, since Nick isn't here, of her, please?
No, yeah, the picture.
Good evening, everyone. As Mr. Cole said, I am Lauren Jimenez Salgado. I am a Waukegan alumni. I graduated in 2010, so 15 years from now. Yep, I went through Waukegan schooling my whole life, and so it feels really great to be here and to earn this award as a former student of Waukegan and in front of some familiar faces. I see some old teachers here as well. National Board, like was mentioned, is a very rigorous process, 2 years for components, but it's a very needed professional development that's transformational for educators. So I just want to go ahead and thank the district for their support in this journey, and want to continue to advocate that we keep this program alive and running, because it could truly transform teachers' experiences in the classroom and student achievement overall. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sorry, we have a question from Board Member Hannah.
Yes. Congratulations, Ms. Salgado.
Thank you.
Salgado. How did you go about enrolling into this program?
Yeah, through the district, I was recommended through a peer. Pat Cole runs the National Board program for the school, and so we have sort of like a committee running here at the school that supports teachers going through the process, and we applied together through the National Board website, and essentially have 2 years of support and mentorship through the district, hired employees to help us go through the process. So it was all done in-house.
Okay, and so so I guess my question to leadership is, how many other teachers are enrolled in this distinguished program?
We currently have 8 teachers going through the program. It is at minimum a 2-year process. There are 4 components. We do 2 every year, so it's in a rotating cycle. So 2 of our teachers of that 7 have moved on to their 2nd year, and the other 5 are in their 1st year. If they do not attain within those 4 or the first 2 years, they still have up to 5 years to retake the components and become certified.
And so, and this is kind of an ongoing program.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hannah. And I just want to again shout out, the best class to graduate from Waukegan High School, class of 2010. And congratulations.
75.
But no, this is awesome. And to Ms. Hannah's point, glad to see that we have other teachers going and would encourage us to continue. We talk about rigor, and the most important person in our schools, right, our teachers that are in front of our students. So everything that we can do to support them will help our students. So congratulations again.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Thank you, Ms. Jimenez Salgado.
Keeping with presentations, the next we have Mr. Billy Coleman will be presenting the final results from our mental health initiatives, or our SAVE program.
Hello.
Say why.
My name is Billy Coleman, and I'm just one of the many people who participated in the community mental health pilot program that we ran last year. And I just am here to give the final report to the board and to the community. Our goal, if you can go to the next slide, our goal was very simple: to create multiple and measurable bridges between students and culturally competent mental health wellness resources and experiences, and that ran from May to December of 2022. In May, we started meeting with students, parents, community members, and educators to understand how this would work, and then we started the actual the outreach in August. Our intentions were to model a healthy approach to mental health and mental health services, to create safe spaces where youth can take the lead in conversations surrounding mental health, and to be clear about who we were targeting, which was high school students of Waukegan Public School District 60, to make our presence known as folks who are committed to this cause and to intentionally showing up at events that are dealing with mental health issues. What were the activities that we did? We did 5 late start engagements where we just listened to students tell us about their experiences, and that averaged 7 to 10 students each time. We did 5 lunchtime engagements in person doing data gathering, and we averaged an engagement with 238 students each time. I want to make a very clear statement that this was because of community participation. I want to thank everyone who took the time out of their day to come into the lunchroom and go table to table to engage with the students. We also had 1 student-centered logo contest that was incentive-based. And so the first outcome that I want to share with the community, if you go to the next slide, was the logo that was chosen by the community. This is SAY, right? And that's because we want students to say when they're experiencing stress and anxiety. This is a logo that can be used immediately. If staff wanted to start wearing buttons, or if there needed to be posters about where they could go to say how they feel and know that they would be safe, a Waukegan student has made this, and we are very proud of them. There were over 45 students that participated in the logo contest, and I want to thank, I'm going to say her name wrong, but the art teacher who was very influential.
Miss Frankel.
Yes, Ms. Franco, who was very influential in making sure the students knew about this. And we apologize to anybody who didn't know about this logo contest. So I want to go to the next slide, which is our data gathering output. The first thing that we noticed was that the word mental health has a negative connotation, and it has a negative cultural leanings with students polled. As the top word association with mental health was depression, saying a problem when you talk about mental health, but mental health is not negative. It's very just neutral. This is just where I'm at. You guys have any questions about data gathering 1?
No, I would like to see that logo again.
Yes, ma'am.
And then, as long as it's okay with you, Billy, I will ask the board and then community too. You guys can ask questions. With this type of meeting,
yeah,
is that if we can hold questions to the end.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, that's good.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
So we'll go on to data gathering number 2. So data gathering number 2, majority of students polled, 61%, do not know or are unsure of what SEL is. SEL is social and emotional learning. And I think if we were to poll the community, I think parents and adults would be the same. Young people seem to be very aware of what SEL is and how to engage with it, but there seems to be a generational gap. When asked to rank areas of SEL that are most important to them, they chose self-focused learning. They want to engage in self-awareness, self-management, and responsible decision-making. They chose that over social awareness and relationship management. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that. I think we over-police the students, right, and punish them for making bad decisions. But how are we really determining that they know how to make those right decisions? And I know a lot of my personal abilities to do that came from the home. So I just think it's important to acknowledge that. Our third data gathering output showed that the majority of students polled, 63%, feel that they can be authentic at school, while 37% of students that were polled feel that they cannot be authentic within their school community. And the majority of students polled want to see student communities that help them communicate effectively, listen actively, and work collaboratively to problem solve and negotiate conflict constructively.
Can you hold it to the end, Ms. Hannah? Write it down, please.
Yeah.
I did want to just stop and acknowledge that too, that every engagement that we had with the students was very solution focused. And I think sometimes we suffer from ageism because we think that the students have the issues, but really it's the adults. They seemed very primed and ready to answer and come up with solutions for the issues that they face. And they were literally like, we're waiting on y'all to get it together. So some feedback that we received. The students made it very clear that removing their freedoms or joy opportunities due to safety, it doesn't feel good to them. I know we want to protect the young ones, and safety is paramount, but when it turns into just policing them, removing access to games, or, you know, they talked about really wanting to engage with the staff. They said we used to play games, we used to have contests, we used to have prep rallies, we used to do all these things. And they really just sat there for a minute. And some of them expressed real sadness that this is what has become of their senior year or junior year. And they were really waiting. Even some of them talked about off-campus access and how they were really waiting for an opportunity to enjoy that freedom, but they weren't able to have it. We constantly came up against a need to communicate better internally and externally. It was just a real struggle. Letting the staff know what this pilot was about, making sure security knew what this was about, who was going to be in the building, and we went above and beyond to make sure that everyone, we tried to follow all security protocols, and there was still a very big, noticeable gap in communication. So we want to apologize to anybody that was impacted by that, but it's something worth noting. We also got feedback that the students want to clarify an overall Waukegan Public School Bulldog identity across all three campuses. It felt very divided. It felt like either you went to, it felt like either you went to AOEC or you went to Brookside, or you went to Washington. It didn't feel like we're all Bulldogs. They also asked us to introduce transitional education opportunities for students moving from one campus to the next. In one of our listening sessions, the students made a very good point that students who have an older sibling waiting for them at the campus have a better experience in high school, because they have someone waiting to explain the culture and to show them how to do it. And they talked about what it feels like if you don't have someone waiting for you there, and how lonely that is and how isolating that is. So they were really telling us, this is what we need. Please build this for us. And lastly, I'm going to move on to our recommendations. It's really important that the school district clarify differences between trial programs and pilot programs. A lot of people were confused about what we were doing. They thought we were trying to introduce a long-standing program to the community, and they really need to understand that if we're going to move forward and evolve, we're going to have to do trials and pilots to see what works. And if we don't explain that to the community, it's going to confuse them and irritate them. We should also introduce programming with a conscious effort to create neutral scientific views of mental health. We're kind of leaning either one way or the other. We're either being negative or we're forcing people to engage with like self-care or mental health resources. And really it should just be neutral so that people can make a choice for themselves. The students also were very clear that an implementation of listening sessions in place of punitive responses to behaviors with change management processes in place would make a drastic change. They just want to be heard instead of just being punished. The community has asked very frequently for change management process that people can understand. Some sort of policy brief or intervention and evaluation to help people know, why are we making changes in the district? Why were we doing this last month, but we're doing this month? And if we can show that change management process, it would make it a lot easier for a lot of the community members to understand what's happening and why it's happening. Community integration is vital and it works. We saw 6 or so retired community members, as well as community members that are young, who don't have children, come into this space and be really effective and really do a good job at data gathering and engaging with the young ones. Roles and responsibility demystification is necessary. A lot of people don't know what y'all do. They don't. They don't know what the roles are in the school. They don't know what does security do? What does this teacher do? And I think there's a great opportunity for us to use our platforms to explain to people what we're doing in this building. And lastly, I'm requesting the Waukegan Public School engage with the Black and Brown Health Equity Coalition that's currently running. I can send you information in your emails, but it's hyper focused on collecting data from the community, especially teachers and people like you, to see where we are with health equity. Are we suffering, or are we surviving, or are we thriving? Where are we? And I'd also ask for the Waukegan Public School to engage with the Live Well Lake County Community Health Improvement Plan. This is a 5-year plan that's focused on improving education, housing, and access to resources, and it's a great opportunity to create a pipeline to really align our strategies to create measurable progress in the school over the next 5 years. Any questions?
Just to add on to what he said, one of the other things that the kids said to us, and we didn't get a chance to put that on there, is they were very surprised that a lot of staff.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Edwards, just because people online, if you want to come to the mic.
One of the other things that we didn't put on here is they were surprised that a lot of staff didn't partake in this. A lot of the kids was wondering, why do we ask them to do things that we ourselves don't do? That was pretty big, right? And it's something that we don't talk about. And the other thing, when we talk about recommendations, we have to start using these libraries and these auditoriums. They're not being used at all. And those kids said that to us all the time. So one of the reasons why a lot of them don't go to class and hang out inside of the cafeteria is because even these study halls, they're not comfortable in there. It's boring to them. So respectfully to all of the teacher, I implore y'all to do one thing. Look at your teaching. Make sure that it's interesting. You have to get their attention. That's easy. It's keeping their attention. That's hard. And when you guys are teaching, if we are teaching at the desk, it's not helping. Teaching's supposed to be bell to bell. Bell to bell. And if you get around and you move around with them and engage with them, I promise you, we didn't have not one problem, not one day we were there. They talked to us, and we were strangers to them. They see you guys 5 days out the week. Thank you.
Ms. Hannah?
Yeah, could you explain authenticity?
Yes, ma'am.
Within the school. What did they mean by that?
So a lot of students struggle with that word. We ended up having to demystify that about what authentic actually means. But when we use the word authentic, we mean who you are, what is your natural identity, how do you exist naturally, and then when are you performing for the people around you? That's really what we mean when we say, are you being authentic? So some people feel like they can just express naturally and organically because they have the approval of everyone around them. And then there are others who feel shamed for who they are or how they present to the community, and so then they hide themselves. And so as it showed, 31% felt like they couldn't do that. And we know that that's a very real social problem across the board. People just are told some people are in favor or get favor to be themselves, and some people just don't.
And to add to that, kind of like what we experience when a lot of times we come to these meetings and come into a lot of spaces, we are always being told what we can't do. Okay? And part of being authentic is being able to be yourself without being judged, without being criticized, without being told no.
I get it now.
They have no space where they feel safe that they can just be them. We have to provide that for them.
And to be clear, when we talked about the listening sessions, we prompted them very plainly. We said, what are 5 things you would change about your experience in high school? And they were giving all of this information.
Mm-hmm. Did any of them talk about the unsafe educational environment?
No. Mostly, well, we did get challenged. We were unintentionally were ableist to a young lady, and I want to apologize to her. We invited her into the space, and we did not have ASL resources for her available, and she was empowered enough to tell us, don't do it again. If you call me in here, you better have the resources needed, because you got me in here reading your lips for an hour. Mm-hmm. And it really showed us how you could be meaning well, and you can be trying to be inclusive, and you could still be unintentionally violent. Right. And so that was kind of some of the experiences that we were having. We heard a lot of young ones talk about how important school spirit is for them. One young man from AOEC said that sometimes he lies and says he goes to Zion because he just feels like they have more school spirit and they have better facilities, and he just feels he could be proud if he said he went there. And that was hard. That was hard to hear, but he was honest.
Hard to hear from me. Yeah. I'm sad. You know why? Because I've always been one that you have to make things fun for children, and you could make things fun, and that will help them better learn.
Yes.
And I know that through years and years of experience.
Yeah. Yes,
but
ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you all so much.
They also expressed exhaustion with giving feedback and not seeing change. And we really want to be different. The North Chicago Think Tank, all of the community members that are engaged, we want to continue to drive some of these things that they ask for. They don't like to keep taking surveys if we just gonna keep having them taking surveys. Right. They want to see change cycles. They want to see, I asked for this, and now next month I have it. And so anything that we can do to continue further in this work, we're here, but we really want to be good on our word to them, because we let them know that we are different and we want to do things different.
Right.
And I also want to encourage any community member that has a pilot program. I want you to see this worked, right? We bumped our head a bunch of times and we made some mistakes, but this is how it works. You introduce an idea, you work with those in charge, and you give it to the community, and we could do it.
And one other thing, I sent 2 emails to you guys.
Okay.
And please look at those, because it kind of works exactly into what you all are doing.
Yes, ma'am.
And before we finish, one of the things about change, and that comes with educating, and that's part of the problem in the community. They don't know. We come into a lot of spaces, and what he said, when the kids say they're tired of giving feedback and nothing is done. And that's no shade, as we say, to you guys, because we know that sometimes change take time, right? But if we not explaining that process to them, if we're not showing them that process, if they tell us and then it just goes away, and a year and a half later change happened, they don't understand it. And so from somebody that's in this community, that's always out, that's always talking to the people, y'all please just listen to us sometimes. Tell us what you're doing. Show us what you're doing so that we can understand, and when we start understanding, then we can help you guys with the kids. And I have to say this, and it goes a lot to what we did. The staff are frustrated, and I'm talking directly to the board right now. They're frustrated. They tired, y'all. We were tired just doing this pilot program. Some of the things that we synced while we were there shouldn't be happening. But we understand, because it comes from frustration. Just like the kids had no support, that staff don't have none either. And it was disturbing when we have to ask them how they doing, and they look at us like they crazy, because nobody never asked them how they doing, how they feeling, what they need, how can we help them. And I come to these meetings a lot. And you see my level is toned down some, because I'm trying, y'all. But I come to these meetings a lot, a whole lot. And at every meeting I've been to, they are asking for help. And it's been over a year now, and I haven't seen them get no help. Our babies cannot be better without them being better. And so the best way to help them is to help our teachers, support them, staff, security, teachers, nurses, deans, whatever they are, support them. Please support them. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm gonna go to Ms. Luce, then I got two quick comments. Mr.
Go
Kino?
ahead, Luz.
Thank you. Quisiera aportar algo más de lo que él dijo. El año pasado a mí me tocó estar en la oficina porque yo soy normalmente voluntaria en la escuela.
So I wanted to add to what he was saying. Last year, I got the chance to be a volunteer in one of the classrooms.
Y se me dio la oportunidad de poder conversar con un niño que en cierta forma era un niño problemático.
And I got the opportunity to talk to one of the students that in his way was a problematic student.
Lo que yo observé en este niño fue que la persona con quien estaba le dijo, siéntate, escúchame, déjame el celular. Y yo pude ver cómo ese niño obedecía.
And what I could see was that the person that he was interacting with would tell him to sit down, to leave his phone, and what I could see in that child was.
Entonces me dijo, señora, ¿puede decirle, aconsejar a este niño? Se porta mal y por eso está aquí, fuera del salón.
And what they told me was, can you give this child some advice? He doesn't behave well, and that's why he's here outside of the classroom.
A mí me sorprendió mucho, dije, ¿cómo un niño que está obedeciendo a esta persona ahora está portándose mal?
And that surprised me a lot. How can a child that
Como un niño que estaba obedeciendo a la persona en ese momento se está portando mal.
Okay, sorry. How can a child that was obeying the person in that moment is now misbehaving?
Yo hablé con el niño, le dije, ¿qué pasa en tu salón? Digo, ¿no te gusta la clase? ¿No te gusta el maestro? ¿Qué está pasando?
I talked to the child and I asked, what's going on in your classroom? Do you not like the class? Do you not like the teacher? What is happening?
El niño me dijo, es que yo no fui, yo hoy no me porté mal, sí me porto mal, pero hoy no, y a mí no me creen.
And the child told me, it wasn't me today. I don't misbehave, or I misbehave sometimes, but it wasn't me.
Yo creo que debemos de creer en los niños, darles oportunidad de que sean mejor, porque si en su casa no les creen y en la escuela no les creen, ¿dónde van a ir esos niños?
Sorry, I missed a part, but that they did not believe him, and I believe that we should believe them, because if in their own houses they don't, this should be a place where we do.
Nuestros niños no necesitan gritos, no necesitan más regaños, necesitan ser escuchados y buscar ayuda en ese momento si él la necesita. No más gritos, no más regaños, escucharlos.
They don't need any more screams. They don't need any more punishments. If they just need to be heard, that's what we need to do. They don't need any more of that.
Yeah.
Probablemente ellos ya reciben eso en su casa. Entonces yo creo que Distrito 60 debe de dar otra cosa, escuchar a los niños.
They probably receive this in their own house, so I believe that District 60 should give them something else. Give this to them.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hodge.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Demontre Hodge. I am the TRIO advisor for Waukegan High Schools, and also I assist middle schools also sometimes. But I just want to piggyback off on everything that was talked about tonight with Billy and Ray and just everyone that was a part of the mental health committee. You know, just hearing the kids, because I'm in the sites like Monday through Thursday, and I go to AOEC every other Friday. Them kids are really like, they hurting. But at the same time, they have to have somebody that's willing to listen to them also. And you know, they don't have a safe space. But at the same time, the people that are in the TRIO program and that I meet with at the school, I create a safe space for them. So I need, you know, the district to really think about creating a safe space for all the teens, for everybody at those 3 campuses, because our absences are still high. Kids don't come to school, so we really have to evaluate how can we make school safer, but more engaging for them. Not just keep handing me those assignments, not just keep saying that, oh, I'll be okay. It has to be deeper than that now. So that's all I have to say.
Yeah. That's very profound.
So my 2 brief comments relate to one, which we said the community participation works. I've been an advocate of community participation. When I had the Men of Vision program with Mr. Ben Grimes and Mr. Chuck Gutman, God rest his soul, I was paid for by People's Choice Family Fund Center, John Sanitakis. I was not an employee of District 60. He paid my salary, but gave me opportunities and time to be in those spaces. And having those connections even then were very successful. The other thing about the community being a part of it is one of the first things that, unfortunately, and I would say it's transparency from one of the volunteers, is they expected it to be the Wild Wild West. And when we came in and they got to see our students interact with our students, the perception of what they heard about walking in school as related to the reality of what they were experiencing and being able to spend time with our students weren't in alignment. And it actually gave them a much different perspective. Doesn't mean that we don't have issues, but it means that the community, from a eyeball standpoint, a majority of community members and residents do not have children currently enrolled in District 60. It's a fact. And so their experience with District 60 is related to what they hear on social media, what they attend or see or hear when they tune into these meetings, what they read in the newspaper. So the more that we can become transparent, more that they don't believe the exception is the norm, right? More that they believe that there is a positive narrative. So the more that we can do from an engagement perspective helps not only the students, but it also helps our community. So I will continue to push and promote that point. And when we talk about community involvement, we have to also speak about the barriers that exist, and we need to figure out ways to eliminate those barriers. The other thing that I will take away as someone who participated in this program deals with that change management kind of system of reporting, is that students will give us information, but if we don't ever very explicitly state how that information is being utilized or how that feedback, right? We've created 2 or 3 policies which are 100% based on student feedback. If those student policies are not then told to the students, right, dress code being one of them, this is why we did it, but that is also a communication that we have to have. And we've seen very disturbing images on social media. And one of the issues that I have is our initial instinct is to be more regressive and become more discipline oriented. And so I'd encourage us as a community is, as we look at these incidents and what's happening in the schools, is that our knee-jerk reaction does not lead to over-policing. It doesn't mean that suspension is not an appropriate response, but Mr. Coleman said something that was vitally important, is why was I afraid of getting suspended? Not because I didn't want to be at school. I was afraid of being suspended for 3 things. It meant that I couldn't participate in after school programs, which is what I went to school to do. And it meant that I was going to go home to a daddy that was going to reinforce whatever the rules and expectations were. So for the suspension is not the intervention, right? And we've been saying that now for over a year, over multiple years. Is that suspension is not an intervention. That doesn't mean that our approach is to do nothing. So I would again go to the administration, talk about how we implement some of these opportunities. I know there are partnerships being discussed with Place Program. Is that right? I'm sorry, Mr. McIntyre. based programming and other opportunities, which will give students something to do even while they're on suspension. But I really want us to take those seriously. And I would like, even with this, to take those recommendations and be able to report out what things are being implemented or changed. One that I think already was included, and Ms. Patty, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is speaking or listening sessions at the Brookside campus with those students being led by that principal. So that was feedback that was provided that has already been implemented. There was a long list here, including the CHIP program. So I would like to come back and follow up and report out what things are being implemented based on these recommendations and the recommendations from the students. So
to be invited to those things too. The other thing is that like a lot of community-based organizations will invite us, or you know, the principals or the executive directors who feel comfortable and who we have had conversations with. But there are some folks that, you know, for whatever reason, like are kind of hesitant to make those relationships, and it's like there's only more people that want to help. We just need an in, and everybody can, you know, take a little bit of piece. And there's people inside our schools that have already said, if we need SEL support, training, they're more than willing to help. It's just about getting everyone on board, and we haven't quite gotten there.
And if
I'm going to go to Ms. Hannah, and I'll give Ray the final point on this one, and then we do have to move on with the agenda.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Ms.
I
Hannah.
want to address something that Ms. Luce talked about how the student was doing what he was supposed to do, but then he was getting in trouble. Okay, and I'm going to say that is something that I learned about when I went to the ALAS conference, and about the breaking the conflict cycle. And I'm going to keep talking about that, because the conflict cycle was not student to student. It was adult to student. And the lady, and I have cards here, the lady that presented, she was just magnificent in explaining how sometimes adults escalate things with students, and it's a matter of them not understanding the de-escalation process. And I want this lady at some point to come in to our district to talk with the adults in the district. And so I heard you, Ms. Luce, what you said, you know, about that, because we need to look at that as well. Yeah, because our students are suffering.
Thank you, Ms. Hannah. And Mr. Edwards, final word.
A couple of things both of you guys have said. You know, I know the board has a job to do. I know you guys are the elected officials, okay? But I also know the board is not inside the school. So when you guys are talking about discipline, and you coming up with policies and procedures, y'all need to be letting these teachers do that. They are there every day. And right now what's happening is their hands are tied because of policies that you guys are putting in place. I'm not off of suspension, but I do also know that the rules are in place for a reason. And some of the things that are happening, and they are being allowed to come right back to school and go right back to class as if nothing has happened, you won't learn from that. Community-based organizations are there, sweetheart. All you guys got to do is show up. Doors is never closed to you, ever. And if they are, please let me know so I can go talk to them personally, because we don't close doors. You guys are a part of this community. We have events. We put them out there. You guys are more than welcome to come. And last, I want to give a big old huge shout out, because when I tell you, I have to, and everybody played a good role up in here, but when we talk about staff participation, that young lady right there, you the AOC principal, right?
No, that's
Miss Carter, there she go. Y'all look alike. I'm sorry. She was amazing. She was amazing. She had solutions. She was ready to get her hands dirty. She was ready to do whatever was necessary to make things happen, right? And we are forgetting about AOEC. They don't have a lot of things that Brookside and Washington campus got, and they know that. And those kids are talking, and they feel the difference.
It only because I love you so much, Mr. Grimes. I know I said final word, but for you, I make an exception.
I just wanted to say to Ms. Luce, it's ironic that she came into the building at Brookside campus last week, and she forgot her keys, and so her son is an engineering student, and she happened to go in with Mr. Tanner, who is his teacher, and she had given Mr. Tanner a pair of socks. He happened to be wearing those socks that day. It's just, and also Miss George took advantage, and she's volunteering now to help out with the project that Miss George is doing. So she's very, very engaged, and we know each other, so we spent some time together. It's a lot of fun. And Brandon, thanks for all you do. I had to say that because she's right there.
Thank you. So I do appreciate that, and thank you, as promised, for the report out. We have the information items that are listed here. So those that don't typically come to the meetings, I'll go through the items. Board, if you have questions, community, if you have questions for these items, everything did have an attachment. And so I want to get through these is because we do have an important presentation in our next board meeting as well. And so I see we have two. So we have our architects as well as Morgan. I forget the name of the firm, but Morgan HR. Okay. Yeah, so who are here for a presentation. So I am going to go through these. I am going to ask board members to have your questions ready, and community members too, if you have a question about any of the items when I call them out. So we have item 5A, reclassification of early childhood leader. This changed from a coordinator to a manager. Were there any questions related to this? The items was attached.
Why?
So Ms. Anna says why. I mean, no explanation was there, but if you want to provide
Sure.
a brief
Yeah, it really is to really focus on the grant aspect of this, and removing or making that a manager position opens up the candidate pool a little bit more.
So does that change credentially?
Yes, it will change. Jennifer, do you mind? It just removes the need for the general administrative certificate. Is that correct? That's the only change. So they don't have to have a type 75.
Because, well, I'm just a little confused because we were, I thought we were going to be doing a study regarding the coordinators and the managers in the future.
That decision was. Do you want to? I'm sorry, Superintendent. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, that's why Laura Morgan and Company, shall I say, what was the name of the company? We did an assessment, and the assessment was done on principals, assistant principals, and coordinators. That's what we contracted them to do the work, and they will be presenting when we get into our operational meeting.
So does this coincide with the? Okay, well, I'm a little confused.
So the position had been open for a while, and there's a need to put someone in that position. And so in order to really divide up some of the duties and make sure that there's a heavy focus on that grant, making sure that it's managed day to day and that we're utilizing those funds, we decided that we would open up the candidate pool for that. And some of the other duties would be absorbed into teaching and learning. So Ms. Rice de la Sanchez oversees the pre-K as it is right now, and one of her assistant directors will be providing the professional development and really the academic side of it. And this manager will focus more on the grant and the logistics pieces of it.
So what it is a reclassification from a coordinator to a manager position. Am I correct?
That's it, right? But that's the rationale for why we're doing it. To open up the it helps to open up the candidate pool. We've had several candidates that there have been applicants that have not had that certificate. So we wanted to remove a barrier, and that would be, and we figured out a way to do that, which will maximize the usage of the employees here, but also address an area of needed support.
And maybe stating more explicitly, we've had historically situations in which we've had to send money back to the state related to our preschool program. We have for a time also not been at 100% capacity in our preschool program. So do you believe that a manager who focuses specifically on the grant manager aspect will improve both pre-K enrollment and our ability to make sure that the funds are utilized adequately and efficiently and effectively to support student growth and learning?
That's the exact rationale for divvying up the work in that way.
So if it's not at full capacity right now, I'm really waiting. Well, I want to see once this position is, put in place, and I really want to see the enrollment of the preschool program.
That's the goal.
And the necessity of the diversity that should be going on there too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hannah. All right, we have item 5B, the 2023 Innovative School Summit Conference addressing learning loss, cultural responsiveness, and supportive discipline. Any questions related to this item? Item C, I'm excited about, which is WHS new course AP 3D Art. The information has been provided. This increases our offerings and another opportunity for our students to earn AP credit. Any questions from the community or the board related to this?
I had a brief question.
Go ahead, Ms.
One,
Gonzalez.
I don't know who the teacher is. I'm assuming, but will this require us to purchase any new materials other than the ones we have available for students?
Yes. Do you want to
Like
come up
computers
and
stuff?
We got the money, so y'all better spend it before we have to send it back.
So what we would be asking for was just some new tables because ours are falling apart in the room, which would provide more storage for students and materials as well. The other thing would be documentation equipment, and then just training for myself with AP courses.
Awesome.
What about materials and stuff that the children are going to use?
Most of that is already supplied through the department, and so it would just add it into all of that. So like clay is already used, so it'd be there. Yeah, always.
Better spend the money before we go back.
Right, I say Ms. Massimo has absolutely no issue with spending money on our arts department and creative programming. So that's awesome. That was it, Ms. Gonzalez?
Yeah.
All right. Seeing as there are no other hands, we're going to move on to CKLA on-site school-based coaching. The information related to this has been placed there, coaching for the purpose of deepening teacher knowledge on the foundations of the science of reading. Are there any questions from the community or board related to this item?
Amplify. They're good, and they have been doing the science of reading at the different conferences that I've attended. They've been there, and hopefully we can expand on what they're doing, so that the science of reading becomes a permanent part of District 60 and the means for our students to become literate and lifelong readers. because it's very important. And look, y'all better spend the money before we have to go back.
So, to jump on what Ms. Hannah is saying, and also to model what it was we heard from the last one, we've been hearing that reading has to be an intentional focus. And there's been talk around the science of reading. There's also been, Ms. Hannah's been instrumental on state committee related to looking at this specific issue, along with bringing in the right to read programming, video film with Deputy Cesario. They held it over at the Waukegan High School. So this is a visible investment around producing better readers in District 60.
And Mr. President, the actual full documentary will be coming out. It's either February or April.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Ms. Hannah. All right, we are at item 5E, WH Spanish textbook adoption approval, transitioning from real...
Realidades to auténtico.
Y'all heard it. Information for the Board of Education on the purchase of the foreign language standards curriculum. The information and cost and rationale has been presented. Got any question from either the board or community? Okay, we are at item F, which is Education Systems Center Partnership. I'm excited about this personally. Did you want to just very briefly touch on this one, Deputy Cesario?
Yeah, I think it's an opportunity to partner and expand our career to education offerings and do it in a network. So it aligns to the high school transformation work that we've been doing and our goal of expanding opportunities for our students.
Are we going to see results from this program?
We will. It takes time to build that up, but we will.
We've been asked about to hold on and hold 3 fingers and then it'll come. That takes a while. Our children cannot afford for us to keep using the narrative. It takes time. Our children, we're at an urgency, crisis in our education of our children, and they need it now. And so, I'm expecting results.
Yes.
Now.
Yes.
We can't wait another 2-3 years down the line.
We've already started adding some programming. Yes. This is to expand on what we've already built on.
Okay.
But yes.
I have a brief question.
Go ahead.
Maybe going back to like the now, will this be married to the scheduling system that we try to implement about having students know kind of like the courses that they need every year and like having their schedules on time? Will those two go hand in hand to create the pathway that they want to choose?
So I think it's going to be dependent on what that pathway looks like and what that requires. I'm not, it's a very broad question, so I'm not trying to evade the question, but I think it's dependent on what the pathway looks like and when and what the coursework that's required for that.
Okay.
So I can actually
I help with
superintendent
this?
is.
I think I'm understanding this, and if I'm not, correct me. But I think schematically, Ms. Gonzalez is asking that the new programming software that we're utilizing now, will that all be inputted into it? So freshman year, if I'm going into STEM, we'll use STEM, then my classes will be lined up for my freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year in that pathway. And I'm thinking, and I'm looking at Dr. Nault because I know I'm thinking that if that's the pathway, you would work with the programming agents to set that up. Is that what you were asking, Ms. Gonzalez? So Dr. Nault, can you respond to that, please?
Yes, no, maybe. Or am I thinking of another? There's a software that we purchased.
There is.
Okay, I'm not imagining it.
So you're correct, Superintendent. Whatever courses that we offer as part of all of our course offerings funnel through that Cardonics.
Yes.
Is what the program you're
Yes.
speaking to. Funnel through Cardonics, And then students, when they go through their normal course selection process, they can pick courses that align to the pathway they're interested in, dual credit options that align to the pathway they're interested in, et cetera. So it's all, the full menu's there.
Okay.
But I think Ms. Gonzalez is taking this a step further. And just, you don't have to answer this now, but when you meet with them, once we start getting into these pathways, whether it's HVAC or policing or whatever it is, the pathway is, that program or that schematic is set up, that freshman that's in HVAC knows what classes they need to take freshman year, sophomore year. So when Teresa Placencia comes in, my schedule is going into that pathway. And so as you're building out these CTE clusters, I'm going to call them, that you're ensuring that that program is schematic for them as they come into high school. That's what she's asking. And so when you meet with them for the upcoming school year, can you put that on the table as you build out the pathways? And to me, it's very easy. It's done in other districts, but that's what she's asking about.
Yeah, and my answer was because usually we start doing that right now. Okay. So those conversations are starting right now for next year. Okay. And that's one of the reasons why we purchased Cardonics. Yeah. And what I was saying is we don't have, some of them are not there yet to say that.
And there's new courses.
And there's new courses and that's it. So I didn't want to.
Go ahead, Ms.
Okay,
final question.
is that the same program that that the board purchased the master for master scheduling?
Correct.
All of this is all together.
Cardonics is not a part of this request, but we purchased Cardonics 2 years ago.
Yeah.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
And they all bleed together when it comes to creating the master schedule, right? Again, the course offerings that we offer as a district are part of that master scheduling process.
And I'm glad that you all are working on the master schedule now for the next year.
Yeah, they work on it year-round, I think. So.
Thank you. We are at item G, which is upgrading Laserfish licenses and professional services. Information has been presented there. Workflows, quick fields should make, again, this is something that's done to make jobs easier, more efficient, input easier. Is that correct? I see Dr. Cuevas shaking his head, yes. H, Aspiring Latino Superintendent Academy. This is for one of our principals, and if I'm not mistaken, he came and spoke to us about this, but this is just a conference.
It's part of his academy.
Another way, calling out how District 60 is investing in future talent, right? Because we talk about all the time how we want to grow our own, and so this is an opportunity to continue to build our own bench and pipeline for future leadership opportunities in District 60.
And Superintendent, you still have your group of black men that you work with, right?
Both black and brown, but yes, go ahead, Superintendent, if you want to.
Yes, MCEL is still in operation. As a matter of fact, they had a chapter meeting, I believe, a week or a week and a half ago. Last week, right? Yes.
Thank you. Which, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Campos is a part of that as well. Then we have item I, 6010. This item is being held over because it was up. It's not really being held over, right? But the first reading won't be official until next Tuesday. It was uploaded without the red line copy, so I want the board to be 100% aware of what changes are being recommended. So this will be coming back as a first reading on next Tuesday. With that, I would like for a motion to adjourn. Motion by Ms. Wozniak. Second by Ms. Gonzalez. All in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Meeting is adjourned. Let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll meet right back here at 7:15 to continue with our Operational Services Committee meeting.
Thank you.
I would like to call to order the January 17th, 2023 Waukegan Public School Operational Services Committee meeting. If I can have a roll call, please.
Ms. Hannah? Yes.
Mr. McBride?
Just making sure y'all are awake.
Mr. Riddle? Ms. Callahan Wozniak?
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo? Ms. Gonzalez?
Here.
President Ewing?
Here, and we do have a quorum. Board members Leguizamo and Riddle both did notify me that they would not be able to make today's meeting. All right, first item is 3A, approval of the minutes of the November 15th, 2022 OSC meeting. We have a motion to approve. Motion by Mr. McBride,
Second.
second by Ms. Gonzalez. Any comments, questions, corrections to the minutes? All in
I'm
favor?
passing.
Okay. If that's the case, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mr. McBride?
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak? Yes. Ms. Hannah?
I'm gonna pass.
President Ewing?
Yes, motion carries, item approved. We have our discussion items. I'm going to move up, if you would bear with me. I'd like to get through the big stuff early on, Deputy Moden. So in additions to A and B, I'm going to move up. There's no letter, but Waukegan Educational Services Center, so 214 Washington. And I did want to also call up the Capital Improvement Committee update. Or did you plan on presenting E, or you just wanted it there for information? You're presenting E. Okay. Go ahead.
If you're referring to, excuse me, Board President, 5E, that was just for your information.
6E. Capital Improvement Committee update.
That is also just for your information, but if there are questions, we'll answer
Okay.
them.
All right. If that's the case, then we're gonna go A, B, and 214. So calendar committee recommendations for 3-year calendar. That is there as a discussion for possible board action.
It's not set in stone, is it, right?
It will be when we vote on it. So if you have questions, comments, corrections,
Right.
you will want to
and
get those
I will
in.
be looking at that because there's some things that I have concern about.
Okay. So those items have been presented there. I know that there's been a deep consideration one as we start school earlier, that be reflected, that we in school earlier in May. That's also reflected. But we have gotten a request to align some of the off days with staffing days. So sometimes our Christmas break and the rest of Lake County's Christmas break don't align. And I know that that was an intentional thing that the committee was looking at, right? It's because of many of our teaching staff do not live in Waukegan. You end up with high absences on the days when those other school districts are out of school because they need childcare for their own children. So in addition to any of Ms. Hannah's requests or recommendations, any other board members that have questions, please get those in. But this is what's being presented, and remember, this is done in collaboration with Teachers Union, and who else is all a part of that? Deputy Moten.
So the calendar committee is composed of all the 6 unions actually, as well as district administration.
Got it.
And the various departments.
So there was a lot of thought and back and forth and collaboration that was put into it.
Yeah, we need to have a board member on that committee as well.
Got it.
So I'm volunteering.
Yeah, there could be this one, but we can always, definitely make sure that on the next one. So this will be for 3 years, revised annually as needed, which is what we do typically, right?
Yes, sir. This is agenda item 4A, the 3-year calendar, based on the recommendation of the calendar committee that's composed of several individuals. Actually, there are some individuals here this evening. Ms. Montalbano was here. She sat in on that committee as well. But this 3-year calendar is reflective of that process like we've done in the past. And if the board recalls, last year there was a request to modify spring break. So we do have the ability, even though we're requesting an approval of a 3-year calendar, to bring future years back if there is a need. If there are any specific questions regarding some of the the proposal here. We do have Mr. Hedgenall in the audience who helped lead that work on behalf of the district.
The only question that came to mind is if you all considered the situation that we had with some of our student athletes in graduation, I think this past year.
Yep, that's ongoing.
I don't know if we know those dates already beforehand for I don't know if it's like sectionals or
Right.
state, like the finals.
Absolutely.
So that would be a takeaway. So to come
Yeah.
back and
You don't have to answer that today, but
that was a consideration. Is we had students that I think we ended up making it work because we,
Yeah.
they left and went straight down there.
Mhm.
But with us in the school as early as we do, we started to run into an issue where when students qualify for state or athletics, is they're having to choose between graduation and competing, and we want to eliminate that decision as much as possible. So.
Go ahead.
Thank you for the question. Well, first of all, good evening, President Ewing, Superintendent Placencia, board members, faculty, admin, and community. The school calendar has historically been a student-based when students are in school and when they're not in school. There was never a consideration, not to say we can't do that, but never a consideration for extracurricular activities. And what we do try and do, and we had some new members on the committee, and they asked some really good questions, quite honestly, some that I couldn't answer because it's always been this way, right? And so what you have in front of you is what we believe to be is a very good calendar. It's balanced. The semesters are balanced, 88 days, instead of having one semester at 92 and another one at 84. So there is a lot of consideration. If I could, I would just highlight a couple of things. First of all, historically, since I was here, students came on Thursday. I was asked, why do students come on Thursday? Couldn't answer that. They said, wouldn't it make more sense to come in on Monday and start the whole week? Because kids, they don't get a lot of filled classrooms on Thursday and Friday anyway. So, and then plus two, teachers, in terms of support of teachers and staff, the district institute days would be Monday, Tuesday, professional development would be Wednesday, and then Thursday they launch right into the classes. As opposed to now, the calendar is they start district institute Wednesday, Thursday, professional development on Friday. Teachers and staff get the weekend to continue to prepare and get ready so that Monday, when that day comes, they hit the ground running. Okay? If I could, just a couple other tweaks. Parent-teacher conferences, that didn't change. That stays as historically how we've done it. But it's at the end of the first quarter. Ms. Gonzalez, you may not know this, but it was end of November before we changed that. Records Day is now for the end of the first semester on the Monday following winter recess, winter break. Okay? We tried to bake in 2 weeks of time for teachers and staff to be off, given their collective bargaining agreements. The spring break is the last week in March. That is also there. So we did try and take into account some of the other things, but we really didn't talk about graduation, quite honestly. We didn't talk about extracurricular activities, and because we don't know when those are. If we knew that information, we could probably bake it in.
Right, and that's amazing because the calendar should be being student friendly.
Absolutely.
And so am I looking at school starting in August, on the 9th of August?
No. Okay, so if you're looking at the 2023, 2024 calendar, students will start on August 14th, which is a Monday.
Why
So
are
the
we?
orange.
Yeah,
I
I
guess because
see
we
that.
can't see the color coding.
I can't.
I see the color. Yeah, you can't see the,
Like what everything stands for.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, so, okay.
But,
so-
you can go back.
So,
Why are we starting school so early in August?
so that students at the high school can take their final exams and before winter recess, before winter break. And also keep in mind that right now, the 23-24 calendar, you have 88 days in the first semester and 88 days in the second semester. So when we have that day being August 14th, the semesters are balanced for 23-24. And that's the pattern we used for the next school years as well.
Steve, can I also jump in?
Sure.
Ms. Hannah, and just historically, many school districts started their school year later, like in September, because it was cooler, and they didn't have air conditioning, right? And so they would start later and go into June. That's not a problem for us. We now have air conditioning in our buildings, but just so you know that that type of thinking historically has been how school districts have set calendars, and why some districts would start like even after Labor Day.
Right. Okay. Because it's kind of like the end of summer, and that's what it kind of cuts into people's vacation time.
But they get more because they got all of June now.
Right.
Well, one of the things we're trying to do, Ms. Hannah, is we're trying to develop a pattern to where it becomes consistent, so people can plan better. If there's a pattern in terms of when the school year starts and when the school year ends and so on, and if we're consistent with that, I think, I could be wrong.
And Mr. Hedgenow, correct me if I'm incorrect, but previously all of our high school students would go on break for winter and then have to come back and take finals, and that could be very taxing, right?
That's correct.
So we're trying to align it so that kids are in school, they're able to take their finals and go on break, so it's coherent and cohesive. And so that's the rationale, one of the major premises of this calendar.
Right.
And just a reminder, that was at the request of students and staff at that time.
Tthank you,
So-
Board President.
We have, I'm going down to December.
So what I'll do, Ms. Hannah, is for the sake of time, if there are specific questions, if we can email those to the group and come back before we get the approval, because this is the first time the board is seeing it.
Right.
So if you want to go ahead, read through all three calendars, send any questions. Was Mr. Hedgenow the committee chair? Do you want us to filter those to you, Superintendent?
I ask that you send them to Mr. Moulton and CC Mr. Hedgenow, and they can both work on them together.
Thank you. So that if there are questions before it comes back for final approval. All right. Thank you, Ms. Hedgenow. Thank you, team, and all those that worked on the committee.
Thank you. Nice seeing you all.
You as well. Next up is item 4B, administrative salary structure audit update and Morgan HR recommendations. So we're going to turn this over to Deputy Moulton and Morgan HR.
Thank you, Board President. Good evening again. Ms. Laura Morgan, Mr. Rick Harris are here to present the findings of the salary audit that was approved by the board in April of 2022. At the conclusion of their presentation, the district is going to provide some recommendations we're going to ask you to take action on at the upcoming board meeting. Ms. Morgan?
Oh, gosh. Thank you. I need my glasses. I'm getting to that age. So, well, I am at that age.
And just a reminder for community and board members is if you guys want to write down your questions, we'll make sure to address them at the end of the presentation.
Yeah, great. So thank you all. Appreciate the time. Sometimes I teach this to everybody, not just how comp is done. So thank you for the opportunity to work with each of the HR friends at Waukegan. And I have a presentation to go through, probably a lot, but we're going to make it very simple. And so again, I appreciate the opportunity to address questions at the end. So the purpose, I gotta So I will go through the background and how we got to the objectives and then the study results. We did look at principals, assistant principals, as well as coordinators, which did come up in the previous session. So it will ride well with the same content. And then recommendation and next steps, again, that will be with Mr. Moten. So on the next slide, we had an early start of understanding what was the situation. Again, I met with the HR friends here before we signed an agreement. What was happening, if you remember back in April, there was a lot of turnover and lack of retention. So we were addressing local area districts and other employers with the risk. There wasn't necessarily retention concerns just yet, but there was worry. Oh, I'm on the background. Sorry, you guys asked me to do a market competitiveness, pay structure, and comp practice study. We also did look at internal pay levels for the current employees within this study. So we did that with the intent that you'll have policies and procedures in place to, again, effectively recruit, retain, and compensate qualified and committed admin staff. There's a clarity there. Keep in mind, I did mention the focus was to address the principals, assistant principals, and coordinators. I think there was a lot of questions about managers and security. I had people calling me at home. We're all on the same page. So current situation, we did, on the next slide, thank you. We had the local area districts and other employers are obviously your risk for retention and also for attraction, as you heard in the previous conversation. There wasn't anything reported with immediate retention concerns, but the economy was elevating risk. There is a desire to standardize rates and eliminate as much as we can discretion. That was the desired state discussion, and you'll see how we came to a solution, I believe. Benefit costs did differ for employees with a PEL, or Type 75 in your language. Salary adjustments were as consistent with most districts on an annual schedule. There were hiring rates that were in place, I'm hearing an echo, in place for principals and assistant principals. But there were no scales, salary ranges, or anything of any other guidance for administrative staff that I was able to find, nor did they house. So the next slide goes into our deliverables. I'm going to step back. Again, we were just to make sure that we understand the fairness and competitiveness of the lead admin staff for the compensation. We did collect and organize, I'd say, the job description and job content. We looked at redesigning, or actually designing a structure so that the district can actually adhere to some, I think, solid guidance to determine salary and new jobs based off that last conversation will be helpful. We also did have a budget plan. We didn't know what we were going to face, what was going to be the issue. So again, we did work with Waukegan's leadership here to come up with a strategy that you'll hear from Mr. Moten. So you could skip the next slide because it keeps saying the same thing, agenda back, so thank you. I need the button. All right, so just to remind you, the group, while it was critical mass, on the next slide you'll see that when we're looking at the principals, assistant principals, and coordinators, it was really a small but very impactful group of people for the school, obviously, right? So I wanted to give some emphasis that we did not look at any union jobs. We didn't look at any job that's outside of this grouping. We were asked on the next slide, you'll see the districts that we did pulse or request FOIA information. It was redundant in a way. I request FOIA, but there is ISB. So I also my team did contact ISB directly. We also received, is that me?
It's everything.
Am I wearing something? So I just want to make sure. I'm feeling intimidated with the sirens going behind me. So anyway, but we were asked to look at 20 districts. Timing is wonderful, and also the request of data is wonderful. So when you ask a school at the end of the season, what do you think happens? A lot of people are on vacation, a lot of people are not available, but we did hound and we did get what we needed. We also were told that our requests were a little elevated. They had hardship rejections. So I'll let you know what that was. That was a hardship rejection on years of experience. So most of the other locations, including what we had here, a gap of tracking, even down to ISB, nobody tracks literally principals or anybody's date of service in a job. They will do date of hire. So that was really difficult for us to get to some basic information. So at the end of the day, from the FOIAs, we had 8 files received with 574 employees. In the very, very small print, if your eyes are better than mine, you can see that we did capture the district logistics. I have to tell you, in our regression, I know somebody was really interested in that when I met you last year. The district, those factors don't impact salaries as far as I can on our regressions. The things that do is school type and years of experience, a job and years of experience. So I know that usually people say that our school's bigger or what have you, that in this study group, maybe not some other positions, that did not impact the result. So let's go through the data. So the next slide is on the principals. We had the FOIA requests. We did go through everybody's data that they submitted, as well as going onto every website that we could find, and researched many profiles of categorizing the data from the FOIAs into principals for each school type. When we say school type, that means early childhood, elementary, middle school, and high school. So that was just our basic data gathering to see if there's something that makes sense. We also looked at Economic Research Institute. It's what recognized data source for most government positions, as well as some privately held. So we did pull information for the same population. They, in fact, did distinguish differences based off of school type, and they also have it based off years of experience in the job. We then found, thankfully, the school district did secure, thank you, LeBaron, we did locate a survey source that's direct for ISB members, as well as those that subscribe. It's called Forecast 5. This is why I was worrying about what will you use to maintain in the future. So this tool will be fantastic for this district. So in there, they actually track to the school type, and so you'll be able to access that data more readily as well. So in the 3 survey sources, you did see the ISB does not differentiate by school type. They did it for principals. Forecast 5 does. And at that time, we didn't distinguish, even in our own district here, by title. It just, you guys knew who was a principal of respective schools, but it wasn't housed in the data. So I had to work with HR to make sure that we start coding that so that we could identify that easier. So it was a manual effort to identify by school type. There was a significant differentiation, as I mentioned in our statistics, that did come out saying that that is relevant. Actually, knowing those 3 factors at 96% predictive of what those salaries would be. So that was pretty solid. And then the ERI data did not differentiate by school type, but does distinguish by years of experience. So if you move on to the next slide, is assistant principals. Looks the same, just different population. So you can see the same thing by school type, coming up with the same results. It's really the same basic information, it's just sharing it with you how we collected and capture the data in summary. So, and then the next slide is the ISB. It's a little colorful. The green highlights the highest paid. It goes for 2 pages, but of all the districts that we were looking at, the green are the highest paid, the reds are the lowest paid by the median for those positions. So that's what was a nice, helpful, quick eye review. And then if you notice here, again, they didn't distinguish by school type, and we'll get to coordinators in a minute. So the next 2 slides, I think you could skip. Yep, thank you. All right, now the coordinators. This one was a little bit more work. You heard even the previous conversation, if you were here, that the manager, I'm talking to them, I guess I should talk to the coordinators, what we were discovering here were a lot of unique job descriptions, a lot of unique down to people in the same job classification, but they were distinguished difference by the years of experience for that job. So what was the truth? Is it really a coordinator of SEL with 5 years, or a coordinator SEL with 0? So we did an assessment of, let's make sure we have a career path for the coordinators by years of experience. And you'll see that in a future recommendation when you get there. So we did find that the specificity in the state of Illinois, and actually I think in other states as well, they did a wonderful job, by the way. I don't think you hear that often with the state. but they did categorize coordinators into three main buckets, starting with, for all coordinator eligibility, which Waukegan already honored, was the eligibility, as you heard in the past, if it does require a PEL, a Type 75. So if that job does have a PEL requirement, then that falls into the coordinator with the state of Illinois, as well as what you had corrected, I think, not too long ago. So that was a great start. So there were other categorizations of those coordinators that the state does capture, which we needed to group the coordinator jobs into those three groups. So one is the school support, one is just administration coordinator, and the other one, I'm cheating, I should have looked ahead, was school support special education. So you'll see on the recommendation that we went to at least create those core job descriptions and then take the positions that Waukegan has for all of those coordinator jobs and see how they slot into those three buckets. It's required by state regardless, and so we actually thought that was a great delineator to use in general. From there, though, what was nice is how the numbers did on our regressions work out. Our regressions proved that that was relevant. So there was a great connection with our process to align the coordinators by each job group to start with. So the ISB list of coordinators are very specific. Again, the decision for the job having a coordinator or manager, I liked what I heard earlier, so everybody can hear to help you feel that that was a good decision earlier, was the fact that you were looking at, does it require a PEL? If the work doesn't require a PEL, it should not be a coordinator with a PEL requirement. So if the job is very simple, because the goal is to have people have access to work, not to limit access, right? But once you're in the job and you have the requirement, it's going to be honored and you're going to execute that certification. So that's what we had to work through. So there were, what you'll hear in a few, just two jobs that I think HR had identified already that were not coordinator eligible, and there is a recommendation about how to address that. So, but everybody else in the coordinator jobs are now aligned, if this recommendation goes through, into the three main buckets that are required by the state regardless. So, okay, so the recommendations, this will be blurry, but if you could skip to the blue box screen for me here. Okay, so here's where the new structure for these jobs, you'll see that we created not just assistant principal and principal, we did break that one into unique jobs based off a school type. So those jobs we did agree on expanding. The other jobs and the coordinators we agreed to consolidate. So, but at the end of the day, it creates a nice clean structure that you could look at any need within the business, within your school district or what have you, saying, does this job fall within this group? And what is our need to fill from an experience level? So this helps you with the thresholds to enter a job. We also aligned it to the max, but really we wanted to start making sure that we would honor a person's full experience. A little different than what you had. If I remember, you had assistant principals and principals with a hiring rate based off experience here. What we wanted to do, and we feel it was commensurate with what we saw in the market, as well as with what would be good, healthy placement to retain and attract, is honoring people's full career experience in that job. So if they had a job in another district, I like your head nodding there, Teresa. It's something that we would honor and tabulate. That was, anybody filled out a survey here? We had to get that data from everybody, so because it wasn't in the system. So HR did say that they were going to validate, but we needed to get a good understanding from the current state who was in what career experience category. And so that was a little bit of the extra effort that we had to do to make sure we weren't just going to put a range up without knowing will it fit. So when I say fit, we did do the math, we came up with the salary structure, but we didn't want to see, what's the impact on the people? So we needed to see that information, and that's why we did collect an extra survey. The communication behind that might have been vague, so I apologize, but we were in a haste, eager trying to get this done, but we did want to get the data to help support our recommendations. So the ranges here show that if someone has a brand new experience into a coordinator, they have the coordinator PEL, and they're 0 to 3 years experience, this will be their salary range. Notice though, once you start getting more seasoned and more experience, the challenge with most salary structures that I have in any business, I have to tell you, is it's getting to that midpoint as fast as you can. Usually the learning is so exponential, but once you're competitive, that's where we wanted to make sure we had a good progression to get people there. So if the district has a salary recommendation going back where we were for years, now they're getting heavier, I think, so you might be able to keep up. But back in the days with 2% and 3%, this will actually help address making sure people become more market competitive in a faster career trajectory. So that's the intent here. It's a very common approach. We did talk through other options, and this is the one that we felt allowed for a healthy structure, but at the same time giving some judgment. Again, looking at experience, we will say yes, 0 to 3, but if someone has 3 or 4 and the district wants to, they'll be very authentically clear. Well, when you did that, you were at this location, or we can take that as comparable, but or we can't. So that's maybe some of the gap here, but that will be part of that role within HR to make sure that they do have the right people in the right job. So again, we looked at school type, years of experience and endorsement. It came out to be 96 predictive. It was wonderful. Facilitates faster progression and allows for consideration of growth and tenure in district-related experience. And then and it will be coordinated again with the ISB grouping as required. So that's my part. Oh, I did have an additional slide, didn't I? I had one more just to make sure you guys know that I did my job. So I did look at pay equity. I apologize, LeBaron. We did look, okay, with the data that we had, keep in mind, I had to go pulse information that we had for specific groups. This is just informational. What I do recommend that you do in the future is once you have all that data for all employees, then you could have a very healthy regression analysis. I think a lot of the challenge I have with most of my clients is that they look at a small picture and they make a big decision. I'm just letting you know that right now, in a simple way, with a population of 2.7% of the group, I was only able to say that you have a very healthy median for female and male and minority and non-minority, but that's just an inclination that, hey, there might be other studies that we want to do more broadly. So I did start the analysis, but I think it should be carried through more deliberately. That would be something that you'll hear in the news. Most states are requiring that from all businesses, public and private, annually anyhow. So I'm letting you know that there will be work done. And then HR will need to track, as we already covered, experience by school type. And then I do recommend the titles are changed, at least for tracking. So, and then they'll need to ensure the impact of this study, like I just mentioned, doesn't make any unintended, unless you look at the full group. I'm good with the assistant principals and coordinators, but looking at pay equity adjustments, I think it's a little premature at this point. So any
you say it's premature.
To do adjustments based off of gender and minority right now. So until there's a larger study done on the entire population, I wouldn't recommend making a decision on what I discovered here. It was part of my charter to say I'd look at it, but I only looked at a small piece of the puzzle. So once we have a broader look at the larger population, you'll make a healthier decision.
I think one more, Mr. Vukovic, and then I see your hand.
Wait, can we hold the question just to?
Right, that's what I said. We got one more.
Thank you, Board President, Mr. Vukovic. So, next slide, Mr. White. So, the district is making some recommendations based on the survey results, the audit results, excuse me. So, we would like to come at the next Board of Education meeting and ask you all to accept the salary schedule as presented this evening for the job classifications that were part of this study. That was the slide that had the min, medium, high ranges for the different job classifications. We're also going to be requesting that a salary adjustment be performed for the staff members that are not in line with that salary schedule. And we would be requesting that at the next board meeting. The cost impact of that is a little less than $118,000. We have an approximation here, but that is based on the current year rate of pay for those impacted staff members. We are also going to be recommending, and this wouldn't be an immediate action, but For any staff members who are already at the max salary range for the proposed schedule would only receive benefits in the future years. So we don't want to negatively impact the salary schedule that's been provided for what we might call outliers based on where they currently sit with their base salary. And then lastly, the fourth recommendation would be to reclassify 2 of the identified coordinator positions to manager positions based on the professional educator license that Ms. Morgan represented earlier. If their positions do not need those, currently there are 2 that have been identified, but we would be requesting the grandfather in their salary and benefits because they have been in a coordinator job title for some time. And those are the 4 recommendations on behalf of the district in response to the audit.
Thank you. I saw your hand first, Mr. Vukovic. So, do we have a second microphone, or are we using that one?
Check 1 2.
Awesome.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions and comments. It's a good presentation, something that you should be looking at for all management from top to bottom. I would hope that you've got collective bargaining going on, that you do this type of thing where before you sit down at the table, you know what teachers in other districts, paras in other districts, custodians in other districts, how they're being paid. I would hope that's being done, but definitely you need this for all management employees so that you know when you make recommendations or vote on recommendations that you know what's out there. My question is, why did this take so long? I was here back in the 26th of April, and the documentation showed that it was going to be a 1.5 month process, and here we are now. That should have been, according to their own timetable, it was supposed to be done the 1st or 2nd week of June, and we're now into January. So I don't understand why something like that took so long.
Mr. Vukovic, I can help answer some of that question. And Mr. Moulton, if you want to add, please do. I do want to state that it was of no, I don't want to use the word fault, but I'm going to use that for lack of a better word, of Laura or Rick. Our team had a really hard time getting some of that data pulled together in our antiquated systems that we have in HR, so there was a lot of information that we had to pull manually, and we were slow getting it to them. I'm just going to state what it was. Mr. Moulton, did you want to add to that?
I'd like to hear from.
Sure. I could add to it. As I shared, it wasn't just Waukegan. For my perspective, it was the other districts as well, and the decision to go into the by school type was unique. But then when we were able to get that data stratified, we did try to call during the summer, please help us, we're dying. So it was a lot of personal phone calls and outreach to all the different administrators within the other districts, and they then led us to forecast 5 so that we could then use that more expeditiously in the future. So there was data collection internally as well as externally, and that was unexpected. I thought ISB, I personally, my team did, I called ISB. I'm like, you have this. Oh, well, there's only 2 of us down here. So, okay. So it was very, very surprising that making a decision that we thought was going to be very simple remedy would take so long to come up with the right answer.
Then the other thing is your presentation, your PowerPoint looked very good from what I could see here. I have to say that was not on your district website Sunday night. There was no attachment. It's on there now. I couldn't read it from my phone, but if you want to get information out, that really should have been out on Sunday. I mean, this is something that I've been asking through the FOIA process since November. Now, I expect that in the next 48 hours I get something from your legal counsel closing out that FOIA. But these folks had to use the FOIA process, it seems, to get some of their information. So I would hope we get that. But there are other variables there that do all the other districts in this district, you have the TRS contribution that is picked up by local districts. Was that taken into account? Was the district providing health care or any extra benefits like that? Have those been looked at? Because sometimes that can make a difference in salaries.
It could, and you're right. At this point, though, the decision is really trying to make sure that the base salary was attractive and it would retain. Those other elements absolutely are part of the philosophy that normally are considered. I'd say from what we collected, we did do from the data that was submitted what was relevant into the analysis, and I'd say there was more of a relationship to the base, and so we felt very comfortable on that recommendation. It would be a deeper effort than what we were chartered to do, especially in the 1.5 months. So that's where it did take some time to get there. But you're right, every company should look at their total remuneration.
And I guess I'm a little surprised because you said that this district didn't have, they had the start date of employment, but they didn't have the start date in the position. But if I'm not mistaken, that there is a salary range. So, how can you pay somebody more money for year 2, 3, 4, 5 when you really didn't know when they started in that position? So I think there needs to be some fine tuning in the HR department to clean that up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I can help with that. And you're absolutely right, Mr. Vukovic. And when the current administration came in, there really was no salary scale. And the board's aware of this. Ms. Hannah, I'll let you speak to that, but if I could finish my thought, maybe it'll clear up what you're going to say. But like assistant principals get this amount or principals get that amount. So what we did was we just allocated an amount. So every assistant principal, regardless of years of experience, started at 74.5. And principals started at 87, where directors another number. So we just leveled the playing field, which really was not fair to the employees, as I'm learning more and more about HR under these two magnificent minds. But that's how we were doing that, because when we came in, it was like, okay, well, how does this person make? And if you recollect, probably year 1 or year 2, the board took action on certain principles to address the salary inequities that we were seeing. And a few of our principals, their salary was adjusted, because what we were seeing is that somebody could have been in the district longer but may have been paid less. And what we also noticed at the time, and if I'm correct on this, that we've seen women of color were not at the rate of their counterparts doing the same job, or even in cases where they had larger schools. And Carol May comes to mind. I know that she was one that we had went back and addressed her salary. So I just wanted to add that, and that's why we are now making a recommendation to the board that this salary schedule be adopted. It be placed on our website, so when candidates are looking to be employed, or in HR, when they're looking to be employed, just like other districts, they know what that range is. And it'll actually just make things cleaner when we go looking for job descriptions with coordinators. We know the range already, and the public, it's very transparent for the public.
Two very brief points. I'll go with questions first, but I kind of, to piggyback, I think the biggest inequity, like you talked about, with start date, and the superintendent somewhat addressed it, is that it wasn't for people who had been in the position, Mr. Vukovic. I think it more so impacted individuals who we didn't credit for their years of service. Is if you had somebody who was a principal for 5 years, their experienced principal, when we hired them in, we were bringing them in at, well, we can only pay you this. And they're like, but I've been the principal for 5 years. Yeah, but our floor is X. And so I think this gives much more range and gives credit to those individuals. And just like correction to the superintendent is when we made those adjustments, what you identified was that the 2 lowest paid individuals in the district were 2 of the most tenured employees, although they were new to their principalships, and they had 2 of the largest schools with the highest needs, being Clearview and Carmen Buckner. And so at that time, the board took action in order to move those individuals up. But then we also took action with the unintentional consequence that by flattening the rate of how we brought people in, we created more a bigger pay equity issue, is because those that we were hiring in after the fact were brought in at that lower number, and we weren't crediting them for years of service. And so when I think about an assistant principal, I don't want to see consistent and fast turnover in that position due to pay. You want somebody that's going to stay, that's going to learn, that's going to bring continuity to those job descriptions. And some people don't want to be a principal. They like to be a support. And so I think we want to give the option and the opportunity for them to grow in those roles and be compensated in a way that is attractive and that they can stay there for a little bit of time. I saw Ms. Hannah's hand first.
Yeah.
I saw Ms. Flinsing, and then I saw Ms. Gonzalez.
Okay, question for you all. You all were collecting data and so on and so forth, right? Were you all able to look at the last salary study that was done in our district and by the Hewitt Corporation? That's too bad that you all did not see that data. Okay, because the Hewitt Corporation came in and did the same exact thing that you did, except that it was comprehensive for all job positions. Okay, and they had adjusted and made recommendations regarding the pay, the salary for pay, and they didn't talk about benefits. It was just a salary schedule. And so I'm sorry that you all did not get that opportunity to look at that, because this was done before, and at that time it was done, everybody was on scale where they should have been at that time. Okay.
You'll find that's very similar. We just had a few that were from the hiring challenge of late, I think is the reason. So it would have been very helpful.
It would have been nice to have it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I'll answer I'll straight line your question, Mr. Vukovic, because I've worked with you before and I know you're a straight shooter. I'm not proud as a consultant for something to scope out at 6 weeks and it takes 30 weeks to get done. That's not how we stay in business. Laura did answer the question. There was some ISBE challenges, things of that nature. As we tried to get information from HR, some things were hand tally. They didn't have the systems and processes in place. Quite frankly, though, some things that they were reluctant to give. What you're talking about, we did not see, and it was like pulling teeth to get certain information. And I say that because I see on the agenda that you're going to have someone look at HR from end to end. I'm recommending that that's a great thing for you to do. There's opportunities as it relates to competence, capability, and capacity. Lucy asked a question when we came here the first time. Mr. Harris, once you guys are finished with this salary structure, once you turn it over, are we going to be able to sustain that? I said, Lucy, I'll know as we look at this process, because Laura will focus on the quantitative, I'll focus on the qualitative. I'll look at policy, I'll look at practice, I'll look at protocol. My answer today is I don't have a great degree of confidence. I have an extreme highly degree of confidence in the model we're putting forth. I have confidence in this board because you understand this model. I have confidence in the administration because they understand it. I have very low confidence in human resources that they will understand this and actually mete it out the way that it should be meted out. So it is a great thing that you're having someone assess HR from end to end, because if something's going to fall through the cracks, that's where it's going to fall through the cracks.
Yeah.
Because we need to work on HR opportunities around competence, around capacity, and around capability. This never should have taken us 20 weeks to get done. We did a whole county in just 6 weeks. Also, there needs to be work in the HR area around trust, transparency, consistency, and leveraging of systems. So
taxpayer money helped pay for what we did. I'd be remiss if I did not unpack that for you as you move forward. This model is going to be the model that will help build confidence and trust of your employees if it's meted out fairly, if it's meted out consistently, and if there's transparency. But if they have to undergo what we underwent in trying to get this data, it's not going to work for you. It's just not going to work. We receive phone calls from employees and so on and so forth expressing their discontent, their distrust, and so on and so forth with human resources. And I'm not bashful or ashamed to tell you that there's work to be done there. So this is only going to be as good as the people that's managing it. One recommendation that wasn't up there is that I recommend for efficacy of what we're turning over to you, this model, and for trust, for the next 6 to 8 months, the board ought to review all internal and external offers prior to making them, so that you all understand this model in motion, and so that you help bring efficacy and trust among your 2,000 employees. But that's up to you. So I hope I answered your question directly, Mr. Vukovic.
Ms. Lindsay.
Sir, I have to thank you. That was just a very good breath of fresh air and honesty, because that's what we've been asking for, is transparency, communication, all of it. My question, I think you alluded to, was going to be, how confident are you that this is going to encourage staff members to stay in Waukegan? And I think you hit several of those points. But if you want to elaborate any further.
I'm very confident. If you execute against it the way it was spelled out, I believe that this will be a very competitive district. It's almost a foolproof model, actually, if you take your own discretion and relationships and any personal things out of the mix. I believe it'll go a long ways towards not only attracting talent, but retaining the talent that you have and actually moving talent through the system. I think one of the most discouraging things for me is the 11 people that was impacted, the $118,000 I guess deficit or cost to fix this thing. 70% of those were women, and I think it'll go a long way to fix that situation and to encourage women to apply, to stay, and to grow through with this district.
I love it. On top of that, I just have one final piece to it, because many of us have been asking for transparency when it comes to the pay salaries, and I'm glad that we're finally hearing that that's going to be posted on the district website. We will be looking for it. It should be there. It better be there. Would you and HR also recommend posting that salary on the job listing themselves, not just the website?
I don't see it.
Becoming law now in other states.
Yes.
So it's good
Yes.
hearing comments.
So I'm going to ask the board and the district to do that.
Thank you. That's it.
Ms. Gonzalez had the final question.
I was gonna make some comments, but everything's already been said. We've already had several discussions about HR, but I think the biggest takeaway from this for me is the fact that as administrators, I mean, you guys have a really hard job, but it's so important to be organized because of the things that we're hearing now. And I was gonna ask about, I had assumed that it was women because of the percentage, but that 118, who was broken down by, and you answered that already.
Yeah, 70%.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are those all of the, and so I have a, okay, we did, and I guess this, I'm gonna go back to question that I had previously asked superintendent. We did the principals, assistant principals, coordinators, and now I am interested in, because you all, I'm not sure why you all jumped from, you jumped over the directors, because the directors on the organization chart are above the coordinators. And so I'm wanting to have the same thing done with our directors as well as our managers and the other staff, so that we could get some kind of continuity in those areas as well. I mean, you know, to me, it's kind of half done because everybody wasn't studied. And so I know the superintendent had said to me that that we were going to look at the that you all were going to come back and do the directors and the managers at some point.
So we will have more conversations with Morgan and HR, and Ms. Hannah will come back and report on that at a later time.
Yeah,
but that is the goal, to look at everything.
Yeah, it needs to be done so that we could, you know, it's for me, my opinion, as soon as possible to get it done and over with at the beginning of the year, instead of waiting and then it ends up where we'll be having to, you know, if we do, we'll have to go back retroactive to do something. Yeah.
Duly noted. We'll come back with it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hannah. All right. I moved up the Waukegan Educational Service Center 214 Washington property update. So I'll turn that up to Deputy Moulton.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan, Mr. Harris.
Thank you all.
Yes, so Mr. White, it is actually would be item J. It's at the bottom of information section. It does not have a letter next to it. All right, so we wanted to provide an update on the property at 214 Washington Street, which we've referred to in previous meetings as the Waukegan Educational Services Center. I'm going to ask Mr. Mike Eichhorn and Mr. Justin Wendt to talk about the perspective images, and we're also going to highlight the proposed project schedule.
All right. Good evening, board. Thanks for having us. Like you said, we're here to give a quick update on the current design progress of the project for 214 Washington. We'll start with the main level. This here's an image walking in from the street. This is the main reception space on the main floor. Also on this floor, we're listing that the Welcome Center will be on this floor, boardroom, multi-purpose space. English Learner Department will be here, the Student Outreach space, Transportation and Nutrition face, as well as the Child Care space, all on this floor. And as you can see in the image, as you walk in, we're utilizing that current double height of the existing space, so we get a little bit of height out of the reception space. Next slide, please. This here's an image of the boardroom as it currently sits. This is down the hall from the reception space you just saw, so on the first floor as well. Moving up the building, the mezzanine level, which is directly above the main level where you come in the building. Health services will be stationed there, as well as payroll, human services, and security office. Floors 2 through 6, we're going to have the administration offices, a training center, as well as additional conference rooms. And then finally, the last slide, please. And then the wraparound center. So the wraparound center is currently planned to be on the lower level. So if you come in, hit reception, you're going to go downstairs. This is a shot of the current reception space. Some of the services planned for the wraparound center include juvenile justice, attorney, mental health support, SEL support, substance abuse services. And there are some shared spaces for the entire building down here, including the reception space you're looking at, collaboration space, and then the kitchenette vending area for employees. So with that, I think we have our last slide.
So this slide identifies the current schedule. So currently taking place is the final review with district staff. This is really the logistics and the final layout of the property. The purpose of the property, the shared spaces, the wraparound center, multi-purpose trainings, Board of Education functions is going to remain the same. It's just the details of where all the restrooms, walls, etc. are going to go. So that's currently taking place and being finalized as we speak. We do have a February 6, 2023 Capital Development Committee meeting. Now this is not a district meeting, this is actually a City of Waukegan meeting, and this is a continuation of a meeting that took place last week for the conditional use permit application, which we brought to the board as a necessary process to occupy this space for its intended use in October of 2022. That application, as well as the variance application for the parking requirements, was discussed at Planning and Zoning meeting last week. It's going to be discussed at the Capital Development meeting on February 6th, and then it's also going to be discussed at the City Council meeting on February 21st. Also on February 21st is the planned date to issue bid documents for prospective contractors to bid on this scope of work. We would have a bid opening on March 21st with a school board award tentatively on March 28th, and that's based after our review of the bids that are received to make sure that they are compliant and responsive. Construction start date would start immediately upon contract award. There is a lot of demolition that needs to take place where buying new equipment is not necessary. I know the Board of Education previously approved mechanical equipment, but some of that work can immediately start upon contract award. Phase 1, which would be the lower level and the main level, the wraparound center on the first floor, scheduled to be complete September 2023 with occupancy 1 month later in October 2023. And Phase 2, which would be the mezzanine and floors 2 through 6, scheduled completion December of 2023 with occupancy of January of 2024. And again, this is based on what these gentlemen have seen in the industry, lead times. We have a 4-week time period when bids are going to be issued with specifications for contractors to really get a deep dive and look in what the project is proposing for them to give us a quality bid. And that concludes our presentation and update on this project.
I have some questions. Thank you, Mr. Moss.
Go ahead, Ms. Gonzalez.
So, I have several, okay, because the timeline is ambitious, which is really nice, but also really scary. Have we engaged CLC? I know we had Dean Uriz talk about their new building and some of the programs that they're looking to have at that building that might complement or can collaborate with the ones that we wanted to identify for this center. Yes, no, maybe.
Yes, I've met with Mr. Ruiz. I did walk some spaces with him. I reiterated the presentation for planned use of the wraparound center. He showed me some of the planned use for the new location, which shout out to CLC, grand opening January 28th, in case you all weren't aware. But we've had ongoing conversations about that so the programs can complement each other.
Okay, and then some follow-up questions is that did we ever figure out the situation with parking? Is that going to be part of that City of Waukegan meeting? Because I know that had been an issue for whatever reason.
Yes, so that will be part of the City of Waukegan meeting. Currently, the property has 64 parking spaces. We need an additional 47 to satisfy the requirements of the city, which is really 80% of the total maximum. So we did request the variance for those additional parking spaces to be approved as part of our occupancy for the property. Now with that, we are having conversations, and Mr. Briner, who's our Director of Logistics and Compliance, is assisting with this for additional parking opportunities throughout the city. We did identify a location that's 1 block north of this property. We don't have a copy of a lease agreement draft to provide the board this evening, but we did want to make sure that the amount of parking spaces needed to satisfy the city request were in a consolidated location as much as possible. So we're working through that, but we didn't want that to be a barrier and actually do the construction, occupy the space, and then address the parking after the fact. But at this point in time, there's no lease that the administration has approved. And again, just to reiterate, we haven't brought a draft before the board because our legal counsel is still working through that with Mr. Briner.
Okay. And then final question. I know that we have an idea of who we want in the building, but who is going to own those relationships? Like who's the attorney, who's the juvenile justice advocate, who's the, you know, I know we know our internal staff and who's gonna be inside, but who's gonna own the liaisonship with everybody else?
Sure, that's an excellent question. So there is a vacancy currently for a wraparound center director. That will be a district position. It'll be funded by the Illinois Criminal Justice Authority annual grant that we received, but they're going to be managing the program, so the logistics of the program, any contracts required for the third-party vendors that are going to be using that space, that will be their primary responsibility in addition to the grant requirements, submitting them on a quarterly basis. So that will be the liaison between the wraparound center and the district.
Okay, thank you.
I have Miss Hannah, then I see you, Mr. Vukovic. Miss Hannah.
Okay, look, that was real neat that you put there. There's one thing absent that I have been waiting for. The source of funding. I already know, don't exclude the 2.5 million for the wraparound center, because from what I understand, 2.5 million can only be used for the wraparound center. Where's the other funding source for this project?
So as we go through this project, as we identify all other projects, Ms. Hannah, this, as we said back in April of 2022, would need to be a priority during the budget process for next fiscal year. All the dates that we put on the schedule, the cost impact and construction is going to come not in the current fiscal year, next fiscal year. So as we go through the budget process, this would be prioritized as a district for an FY24 expenditure, in addition to the grant funds.
Why is it a priority? When we have, because we have more pressing things in our district right now than to come up with a new administrative building. You all know my thoughts about this. We have students learning loss, students mental health, the environment at our high schools that need resources. The staff needs resources at in the district. So what makes you phrase this as priority? Why is this priority? Mr. Moten.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Hannah. So I just would like to remind everybody that when we initially brought this forward, it was the first phase of a multi-stage project, meaning we needed to vacate this location to help assist with the best program for our diverse learner students, behavioral challenges, etc., as well as have a dedicated space for the JROTC location at AOEC, and then ultimately a training site as Welcome Center. The district currently owns this property. Ultimately, this is a student-focused multi-phase approach, but vacating this property so it can become a best program is the first phase of this work. As well, the wraparound center, we currently do not have another space that is optimal for that program within the district, and we do have funding to support, as you mentioned earlier, as well as a need within the Waukegan community.
No, it's not. Everything that you listed there, we really already have within the community. Okay, we already have the mental health, the Lake County Health Department. We already have the juvenile justice, the deputy center that's been here serving our students forever. We've got that. I'm still trying to understand Okay, you say that you all are gonna put it in the budget for the next budgeting cycle. Priority. Why is it priority? You haven't answered that to my satisfaction. And I'm not gonna belabor it, okay? But what makes it priority? Okay, and all those, the services, okay, the wraparound center is one thing, okay, but that too, I believe, is a duplication of services. As long as I have been in Waukegan Lake County, I've been on the governing council for Lake County and the medical center, mental health, all of that. I've been on those boards, okay? They already have that. And last time we talked about that, okay, in the wellness committee, the statement was made that before we do this, that school district needs to kind of have a conversation with the Lake County Health Department to see the services that are already being offered, as well as all of the standalone clinics that are all throughout Waukegan. See, we're in the business of supposed to be educating kids, and I think we need to focus on the educating of children instead of the physical plant, okay, unnecessary physical plant that is a wanting of something. Okay, and so this, I will never support it. Okay, I will never support it. The wraparound center is one thing. That's already funded. Okay, that's funded. The rest of it, it's totally unnecessary and definitely not a priority.
Mr. Vukovic.
I believe your previous slide indicated March 28th for board approval.
Yes, sir.
You might want to check your district calendar because that is spring break. So in the past, the school board hasn't met on that week. So, that may throw things off. I'm a little puzzled, though, how you can go and ask for approval on a multi-million-dollar project and not have identified the funding source publicly. I think that's something that the public is entitled to. I was at that meeting last week where the talk was about leasing parking spaces a block away. There was a letter from Mr. Moulton to the owner saying that district would be willing to lease so many spaces at a cost of about $20,000 a year.
Yeah.
Now, I think you did the study on HR. It's not always about money. Sometimes it's working conditions. Maybe you ought to talk to a few of the people who are going to be working in that building and show them where you expect them to park. Because if you're in that garage at Madison and Genesee, it could be as much as a block and a half walk to get to the front door of 214 Washington Street. The history of 214 Washington Street, First Midwest left there over 25 years ago because their employees wouldn't walk that half a block over to Genesee behind the other bank. There was a city lot. Parking is critical. Parking has been the problem in downtown Waukegan forever. You don't need to be jumping into this without having the parking squared away, because you could end up with a white elephant. You may have staff that won't want to go down there. Your clientele that come down, will there be proper spaces for them? Are they going to be parking out at a meter? They come out because their appointment took too long. They're going to get a $20 ticket. Is that fair to them? but that's what the rules are downtown. So, you know, I know you've been talking about this for several years now. You know, at one point in time, when it was first brought up, there was the understanding that you were also purchasing the drive-up bank facility on County Street that's adjacent to it.
Right.
Which had parking underneath it, and the deck could have been converted to parking. Probably would have been a lot of parking issues, but all of a sudden that wasn't part of the deal. So I don't know what happened to that, but that would have made it a lot easier. But to try to expect to have staff walk that far, it just doesn't work. That's always been the downfall downtown. People don't want to walk. Thank you.
Can I say something really quick?
And,
Mr. Sabecki, and then I'll come back to you, Ms. Gonzalez.
Yeah.
Good evening. So I have a couple questions. One, again, is about parking. So if we do this and we have board meetings over there at 214 Washington, who parks in the 64 spaces available? Is it going to be administrators? So the general public has to park a block and a half away and walk? And then who's going to have their safety getting back to their cars? Because we do have a lot of crime downtown Waukegan. We all live here. We all know that. So who's going to be responsible for that? My second question is the wraparound center. We push for this wraparound center, and to me, I think it's a slap in the face if we say we want this to be a community thing, and we put it in the basement. If it's going to be a community thing, it should be on the first floor where it's accessible, everybody can see it. What we can do, put a small sign out front saying that's where it's at, in the basement? When you guys went and looked at this other wraparound center in another town, is that one in the basement? No. It should be first floor. Also on the slides, I didn't see, it said other offices in that. It didn't say anything about superintendent's office. Where's that going to be?
Yeah. So that administrative office will be at this location. The other offices would include those additional departments that were not listed on the first floor.
And then my other concern is the same thing Ms. Hannah said. Where's the funding? Because I sat on many of these meetings, and everything you guys always presented was funding to be determined, to be determined. So we talk about putting this in our budget for the next fiscal year. So is this going to be more money that's taken out of the students' budget when we have a lot of student problems within our district that need to be addressed, as Ms. Hannah said? Both of our high schools, lots of problems. You know, we put out these memos like there's not, it was two people fighting. We all see the videos. Let's truly be transparent here about what's going on in our schools. Because you guys can say one thing, but it's totally opposite. We all see the videos. Same thing, we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on video surveillance systems in our schools, but we never show the community any of those video surveillance systems when these problems happen at the schools. Same thing with metal detectors. I've been at the schools when they use those metal detectors. People walk through them, they beep, and they just continue going. What's the point having the metal detectors there if people can walk through them, they beep, they're not even stopped, or the kid, I don't have nothing. Okay, go ahead. What is the point? That's questions that I like to know. If we're going to do this, the wraparound center should be on the first floor. If it's really a community thing, we should put it down in the basement. And I don't know if any of y'all been in that basement, but I remember going there as a kid with my parents. We're at that bank. That basement is not that big.
I worked there, so.
That basement is not that big. And then my other question is, you guys say it's a priority to vacate this spot. Okay, so then where's the funding coming to redo this facility if it's a priority? Because if it's a priority to hurry up and get out of here, then where's the funding to redo this place for what you want done? All this should be thought about and discussed before any of this even moves forward. That's all I have.
And also, just in continuation.
And I'm sorry, Ms. Hannah. I said Ms. Gonzalez was next. Ms.
Okay,
Gonzalez.
'cause I have to finish. Yeah.
But you
no,
had
go
your
ahead.
point though. But Ms. Gonzalez.
So I just want to address some points that were made. And I'll recognizing the emotion that I'm speaking from. So I model it for students who are probably watching and our staff. But it's so disappointing to hear the comments. Letting downtown die because people don't want to walk seems like a really, really sad way to go about creating solutions for this community, because downtown is dead, and we do criminalize the people who live downtown anyway, regardless of whether they're doing something bad or not. What does that say to my generation and the people who want to stay here? Because y'all lived your lives. So I'm gonna own that I'm feeling disappointed and a little bit sad, and I'll address some of the concerns about having the partners on the first floor. When a student has to go see an attorney or has to go see a specific resource, be it a social worker or whoever, privacy is of the utmost concern, because you don't know what that student is dealing with, you don't know what that family is going through, and they don't want to be seen. Maybe. Everybody's got a different situation. Sometimes they're embarrassed about their situation. I have been, and I know a lot of students who are. So I don't really care where it is as long as it's there. As long as our students and our partners and our staff know that that's their place. Obviously, accessibility being most important, making sure that there's an elevator and everything. But I just wanted to, challenge us to think a little bit differently about what we're saying, because I think part of the vision, like Mr. Moen, you try to remind us, is that this building, we hear the heater clanking. I hear the heater clanking in the back over there. Like, this building needs serious remodels. We've heard it from the parking lot. We've talked about the wall already falling down in front of us. And we need a place to not outsource our students, which we are already doing. And it is a disservice. I get it that we don't want to walk a block, but some of our kids are going out an hour and a half away to go to another school that they don't know nobody at. And this could be that center for them. So there's different ways of going about this, and it's a lot of money, but I would rather spend the money now so that we keep more of our students home. Because that's the whole point, right? I thought that was the whole point of this. And Senator Adrian Johnson, Representative Rita Mayfield, they found the money. If it succeeds, I don't think money is going to be the problem coming from other funds. I really don't.
So, go ahead, Ms. Hannah. Then I'll make my comments.
And on Thursday, Mr. Moten told the committee that that only a portion of the Lincoln Center staff will be transferring into that building, and I guess you were saying that the others were going to stay here. Is that what you were telling them? Because of the parking spaces that's what you had said about the because it was in reference to the parking spaces, and that you said that because they asked about the staff coming there and where would they all park, and you said that only.
So I think that'll be a quick response, Ms. Hannah. So if you let Deputy Moten answer, I think he can clear that up really quickly. Go ahead, Deputy Moten.
Thank you for the question, Ms. Hannah. So the building is planned to be 100% occupied. My intention was only to reference the percentage of staff that would vacate this building and move downtown, because this building currently is much larger than the downtown location. So it wasn't necessarily in reference to saving parking. We still plan to occupy that location, but I wanted to make sure it was clear to the commission that we would not, because some of them reference this location specifically, that we would not be vacating this property 100%.
The other point is who are staying, right? We already have reported that to the board. So for clarity, what are the departments that are being suggested to remain at Lincoln Center?
Sure. Some of the larger departments would include IT. Right now, their backbone for infrastructure is within this building, as well as some diverse learner staff in anticipation of a future BEST program, and some of the business and finance staff, with the exception of the payroll department.
Again, I just want to know, why is it priority?
So I think the priority is that
when we have more priority with our students.
So I think that you do both. when Deputy Moden used the term priority, Deputy Moden was referring to we use a priority budget system in which we have rankings we go through. As you're a member on the budget committee, understand is that everything's listed, you go through, you prioritize it, and that's the stuff that gets done. We have a bunch of unfunded priorities, right? These are things that should be happening, but we run out of money. So what Deputy Moden is saying, if the board, who has voted to purchase this building, who has signed an agreement that we're going to occupy this building, that we're going to place the wraparound center at this building, and I think Charlotte was the one who said it, what are we going to do? And to Ms. Gonzalez's point, this is let's stop reframing it as this is something that's only being done for adults, right? I voted against the purchase of the building, and I had my reasons. The board voted to purchase the building, majority 4. We then went and said, how do we make this fit into the educational plan for our students? There were concerns about outplacement, which Mr. McBride has been talking about for years, since while we've been on this board together, which is what's happening here. There's been talks about reconfiguring the high school and the pathways. So the first step to do the other 2 things is to vacate this property. When we talk about where the funds will come from, it'll come from the budget. And when we talk about what fund it'll come from, it's whichever fund we put it in. So whether that be general ed, whether that come from capital improvement, whether that be whatever, the fund is the fund. The money's all going into the same pot. We decide which budget the fund goes into. Yeah, Ms. Anna, this is the same. We understand, I think, very clearly what is being recommended and is what is being asked for. Parking will be an issue. It's something that we can work collaboratively with the city to find. They talk about repurposing an entire block in downtown Waukegan. Guess what? We got to solve the parking issue. So we have a temporary solution, but I would hope within the next 2 years, as we talk about investment in downtown, do we need to purchase a lot together? Do we need to, what are we going to do? Is because we can't keep using parking as a reason to disinvest from downtown Waukegan. And so there has to be, as they build the Carnegie Library, if they have a new CLC center, as they invest in other businesses that are opening in downtown, parking has to be solved. And so I agree, as we want it to be as comfortable as possible for our employees, but I would say is that I don't want us, I think Morgan HR said something about as you make a big decision on a limited amount of information. And so I think we know and go into it that parking is an issue. So understand that we have to solve for that long term. We have Waukegan Greater Development Coalition. We have Waukegan Main Street. We have the City of Waukegan. We have Waukegan Park District, who all now have park properties in downtown Waukegan. So I would hope that together we can figure out a sustainable solution to parking. And when we talk about, just like Ms. Gall, and I wanted Mr. Sabecki, you're 100% correct. Waukegan is not experiencing the same issue that prompted Peoria Public Schools to do their wraparound center. Their schools are only at 20% occupancy. So they have massively empty buildings that they are repurposing into other things. We looked at placing our wraparound center at other locations. And you know, like I know, is our schools went from being overcrowded to crowded. They still aren't the space considerations in order to put a center of that size. So yes, it was a consideration. Yes, I would prefer it to be at a school site. Yes, that was looked into and investigated, not only with ourselves, but with ACEJA. Where could we put it? What makes the most sense? Is it sustainable where it's placed? And so the considerations are College of Lake County is right across the street. So wraparound services that we don't provide. To Ms. Hannah's point, there's an enormous amount of resources in Lake County. But when you talk to those people that go out for these services, they are disjointed and disconnected. And they're spread out. And so by centralizing these services, we can more efficiently and effectively service individuals. Is because not only when you talk about our students are dealing with hunger, our students are dealing with, we're looking at it, violence. Our students are dealing with all of these issues, and then they're being sent to the school, and we're being told to educate them. And what you and I both know is we can't, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We have to do both. We have to educate them, but unfortunately, because of, I will say, society's failure, is we are also tasked with making sure that we are meeting some of those most basic needs. and as a proponent of the McKinney-Vento program, as somebody who's pushed to bring these resources into the school, I hope we all see the benefit about us collaborating more collectively with our social service agencies. Like, I don't see, what we would hope is that some of those legacy social service agencies would move to this location. Like, that's the whole point and intent, and that's how they did it in Peoria, and that's why they did it in Peoria, is because people were taking multiple buses, creating multiple appointments, having to know the visiting hours of multiple different organizations. Is because if I'm dealing with homelessness, I'm probably also dealing, well, not probably, but I may also be dealing with mental health issues. I may also be dealing with addiction issues. So those are 3 different agencies that concentrate on different things. So I support the initiative. When we talk about identifying the funding source, as we go through the budget process, what fund it comes from, we can move it to capital improvements, and then it'll come out of the capital improvement fund. Capital expenditures. What fund we put it in, it is almost irrelevant. We get our money, and we get general state aid. We get, what you know, right? That's our process, and we're going to identify which budget we take it from. The money's all going into the same pot. So I think that's kind of just as far as a point in when we talk about transparency. When Deputy Moten says it's prioritized, if we're going to do this, if we're going to go through this, it has to be budgeted for and accounted for in the next fiscal year. We can't say that we're going to do this if we don't prioritize it and budget it. If the board decides not to prioritize it and budget it, then it makes no sense for him and his team and staff to spend the time. And the board has already spoken that this is the path in which we are going down.
Well, you know what, Mr. President? You know what would have been ideal? If all of the plans would have been brought before the board.
They did, Ms. Anna.
No, they brought bits and pieces.
They presented a student
They brought
plan,
bits and pieces.
and
I've been looking and looking on board docs.
so if you can send out that presentation or attach it again, that was done, was that April or March, Mr. Bolden?
That was April of 2022.
So
April, okay, excuse me, let me finish. And see, the way that the operations of the Board of Education that I'm used to sitting on, before it is even taken out to anyone, it is brought before the board and gotten the blessings of the board, and then it goes out and the work starts. Not the work starts and then it's brought back to the board. Okay, that's not the way that makes for good operation. Say it however you want.
You're correct, but that's not what was done.
Yes, it was, because
It
the
was
first
not.
time I heard about the parking was at the meeting.
That's
And
incorrect. When was it presented to the board?
You all on the committee?
No, Deputy Moten.
know
When was
about the
it? When was it
parking?
presented to the Board of Education?
Look, be careful.
So
'cause I
the
got
conditional
doubt.
use permit was presented to the board at the October OSC. Parking was provided on December 13th.
I looked at.
Can you
those
resend that
meetings.
to the Board of Education?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Fulton.
Looked at the minutes.
Thank you. Okay. I think we have to understand that sometimes solutions are derived from other people's perspectives, right? I think we need to listen to everybody's perspectives and what we see in the community. It doesn't mean that we're downing our community or not trying to build up downtown Waukegan, but the reality is when we go anywhere, regardless if it's an event, I know if I go to an event in Chicago, if I don't know where the parking is, I'm probably gonna leave from that event. You know, that's the most frustrating thing for a vulnerable population that is coming down there with already high anxiety, going through a lot of things, and they have to have one extra step to try to navigate and find parking. I know we don't want to hear about that. I know we want to move forward, but you guys, just because nobody's coming up with solutions, listening to other people's perspectives, we come up with solutions. And we got to stop, getting, I know I get emotional too. you know. But we have to stop with the community against the board and us against everybody. We're all trying to find solutions, but we have to think as if we were still in that community, right? Or we were still needing those services that are at the wraparound center. My host, Brandon, knows that I've been against the wraparound center. Senator Johnson and Rita Mayfield have heard me being against the wraparound center for various reasons, right? But I'm not going to go into that right now. It's coming, it's here, but we still have to think like them and not think about, I live in a house in Gurney and I can, you know, pay for parking at any time. Not taken away from that because we don't know anybody's income, but we still have to think about that and use just like the organization, a think tank. So I wish and I hope this board, when we're addressing community members, staff members, or anybody, really take into consideration of how some people are just trying to be a voice for the community that is not sitting here today.
And my only thing, because I think that's 100% correct, Ms. Fulton, is I want to add, I guess where I can be clearer is I believe that the spots that the community should be utilizing are the ones that are closest to the building, right? And that is the plan. And if that wasn't articulated as clearly as it could have been, those are going to be the reserved spots, which are for those that are coming for the services. They should not be using pay parking. You are 100% correct. And then to the point of our board meetings, I know that was spoken about. City Council uses downtown for their city council meetings, which are larger than ours. They do have the parking lot for staff and back, and community residents park on the street, which is free after 5 p.m. So I don't want it to seem that we're saying, well, parking or being callous. I understood more what Mr. Vukovic was saying, is it's harder for employees to want to walk, it gets cold, those type of things, and to solve for. But as far as community residents, staff, families, the visitor parking are going to be those parking spots that are closest to the building, that are reserved, because it's the people who are coming in and going. We want them. If you are, and I know yourself, you might be at 3 different buildings. I don't want you to have to fight to find parking. Pull in, do what you need to do, get back in your car, you know, go to your site wherever you are. So if we didn't expressly state that, that is the concept, is those buildings closest to First Midwest, that corner right there, those will be visitor reserved, or vast majority of those will be visitor reserved parking for the wraparound center and for the
itinerant staff that would be in and out of the building.
Mr. Sabecki, I'll give you the final word on this one.
So I just want to piggyback off Ms. Fulton. I never said anything about the wraparound center, Ms. Gonzalez, when you're stating that. My thing is it should be on the first floor. That funding has already been approved. You're correct. We shouldn't put it in the basement. We talk about, well, going to see a lawyer in that. We're the county seat. All of our courtrooms are not in the basement. All the lawyers' offices up and down Genesee, Utica, all of them are not in the basement. That's what I'm saying. If it's going to be a community thing, then it should be where the community can see it. You can't see it from the basement. That's what I'm talking about. That was the whole focal point of getting the building and moving this project forward, is for the wraparound center. If that wraparound center never even existed, we'd still be talking about that bank and what we're going to do with that building. But to me, it's like we're trying to rush this stuff to get it in there so we can get the administrative offices that the board approved to purchase that building, because that was the focus and the priority.
That's right.
Is to get those administrative offices over there. That was before this wraparound center it was even thought of.
That's right.
That's where that came from. Is, hey, we could put a wraparound center in there, let's get those funds, and then let's do the building. That's where I'm coming from. And this is not, as far as I know, this is not going to be open 24/7. No one said about rejuvenating downtown Waukegan. Yes, it's dying down there. I'm born and raised here. I lived here my whole life, and it's not just about your generation. This is the generation after you. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not going nowhere. This is my home, and I'll be here. And probably till the day I die, I will still be here. These are the generations I'm looking out for. It's all the other students. It's not about me. It's about the students. That's what we're here for. Everything we do in this district is for the students. That's what we need to start remembering. All this stuff where this is what we want, This is what we want. This is what we want. We need to start thinking about the students, what they want and what they need. We all need it. Homelessness, people starving, that's everywhere. I don't know if y'all don't drive, but they're on every corner begging for food and that. We know it's everywhere. And that was my whole thing. If we're going to have a wraparound center, it should be where the community can see it. That should be the focal point of that building then. It should be the first floor where it can be seen. And I hope if this does go forward, those 64 parking spots are all for the community. No reserved parking for anybody else. No administrators, nothing. All 64 of them should be for the community.
So I 100% thank you for that feedback. We talked about itinerant staff. Again, I think that's something that'll be taken in consideration, but all 64, again, we gotta be solution oriented. I don't think all 64 will be able to be reserved, but the vast majority of those will. I also will say is the first floor, to Ms. Hannah's point, are being reserved for student-facing services. So McKinney-Vento, FACE, the Welcome Center for registration, that's what's going on the first floor. So we're not turning it into a bunch of offices. It still is parent-facing departments. So that is the concept. So when you take the first floor and the basement, Mrs. Sabecki, just want to make sure we're clear about that, is we're not saying that the first floor is going to be reserved for all of these different, the superintendent's offices, or she gets a suite. So I do want to say I acknowledge what you're saying, but when they looked at design, when the architects looked at design, when we talked about it with the state, it's turning that basement, which has elevator access, which would be really nice when it's done. It's not going to feel like a basement. Yeah. So I heard you, and I do want to reiterate: is those first two floors together, the basement and first floor, are all. When you say community can utilize the services on the first floor, but our parents are community also, and the parents are dealing with the parent-facing departments. So nutrition, right? Right now, even when we talk about nutrition, sometimes registration, you go to 3 different buildings: your school, Lincoln Center, and Washington. So we're not even talking about services, just internally, you go to 3 different buildings. So I did hear you. Vast majority, I'm committing. I can't say all 64. I'm gonna be honest with you on that, but a vast majority of those parking spaces will be reserved for those that are coming in. Parents shouldn't have to fight for parking. Community shouldn't have to fight for parking. Staff members that are going to multiple buildings shouldn't have to fight for parking. So yes, and I do appreciate all the comments and feedback.
One thing I didn't comment over, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I'm saying is, FACE department, all those could be down in the basement too. Sorry. The FACE department and all them could be down in the basement too. Where's it at here?
Yeah, I think right now the design was really, it's clear, right? We can talk about it, but
That's what I'm saying. The funding has already been approved for the wraparound center.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't get the funding for nothing else, what we can do? Just put the wraparound center in the basement and that's it? If the fund is not approved for everything else? So is that building, technically, if the rest of it's not approved, where the funding is going to come from in that, so the wraparound center has been approved, so we're just going to put the wraparound center in the basement and that's it?
Yeah, I think the entire plan and concept has been approved. Right now we're waiting for the final price points and the budget impact to the district, and so that would be a consideration, is because we don't want the wraparound center to be at an unoccupied building. The entire concept is to make sure that everything is there and utilized and functioning. And again, we talk about for the students. My last piece is with you, like you said, Mr. Sabecki, is I wasn't a fan of the plan in its original intent. Is when we purchased the building, I was one of the people, along with Ms. Anna and Ms. Wozniak, that voted no. But we then looked at, based on that was the decision of the board, how do we make it a situation that benefits our students? And I feel that this building, not just because the board wants, when we talk about community members traveling up to an hour away, we hear that from the taxi costs. We hear that from the costs from those that are not in district. It's not just something that Brandon wants, and that's why. But it's stuff that we've gotten through conversations and feedback. The high school, pathways, AOEC, all of those things are being taken into consideration. So your points around design.
And I agree with that, but just like Ms. Gonzalez said, with that thing over there's clunking.
Yeah.
Well, last time, a couple meetings ago, you guys approved to have all that redone at the building, correct?
Yeah, which building?
At the new building, 214 Washington Street.
The mechanicals.
The
yeah,
mechanical
heat
equipment
and everything.
repurchase.
And that's the same thing I'm talking about, though. We have schools in disarray. I did a walkthrough with Mr. Moten at Washington campus. We have these same clunking things in pieces laying on the floor rooms in classrooms. Same thing. And that's what I'm saying. That stuff should be looked at first because that is a need. That's where we teach our students in those buildings. And that stuff should be a priority over anything.
Right. And we have
100%.
113 million. That we had $113 million life safety project that needs to be completed in our school district. Okay? And the monies that we are using to where we paid $700,000 for that building, and 113 million that we need to have done throughout our school, the buildings in the district right now. And we're steadily taking money from out of the education fund, putting it into capital projects and all that stuff. Yeah, we gonna be transparent. Okay, where's the money gonna come from? Where's the money gonna come from?
Unless you tax for it, it all goes into the general ed fund and then it's dispersed. That is transparent. You know exactly where it's going and you know how much you're moving. My only point to you, Mrs. Savecki, and to the community is 100%. My student goes to a school that's 100 years old, right? There are two of them. I have been, along with this board, a huge proponent of improvements. We're not talking about an either or, we're talking about a both and. There's been as much investment in the last 6 years by this board as there's been in the last 15. There have been the expansions when mishandled. Right, so the money's there. So again, I don't think it's a either or, Mr. Sabecki, it's a both and. We've had a model of every building touched, every student benefits, is because there has to be some improvement to every building in District 60 every year, and we can very clearly point to those projects as to what's being done. One of the big ones, which will make people's lives easier, and I've been talking about, and I appreciate Deputy Moten and Ms. Polk for making it happen, is related to the school parking lots. We talk about how crappy they are, and we see the difference that it made at Brookside when we're able to get it done. And so again, when we go through our priority list, parking lots always get buried. It's because you go parking lot or this. So we had to figure out a way to actually set aside money to make sure that those things are prioritized. So I'm only saying that not to combat what you're saying, but because we don't do a very good job of pointing out where we're making the investment in the schools. And you say, if we spend $5 million, $8 million, $10 million on this building, what else are we not doing? That's a 100% valid statement. And I think we're transparent in what we're doing when and how it's going to be flushed out. And that's the work where we got over 200, Montana talked about 100 million in life safety. We have over $200 million in projects. This is one of them, but that's for the board, along with the community to consider what gets done when. But I do want to reiterate is that we're not doing this and then also not being aggressive at schools and school buildings and making those improvements. And there's a capital improvement committee update, which is down in E, which talks about a lot of those projects, including roof replacements, which deal with the water, which, you know, it's a ton of stuff that I'm actually really excited about because it does move the needle on our school buildings with our teachers and our staff and our students. And you can do that and do this. With that, what I'm going to say is we got through all of our presentations. So I'm going to go up and we're going to run through these like we did the last board meeting. So informational items, 5A, property casualty insurance consulting renewal proposal. The information has been presented there. This is a renewal. All those items and the annual cost is listed. B, resolution to reserve funds for project commitments and transfer funds from the education fund to the operations and maintenance fund. to the capital projects fund. That information has been set there is for $500,000. Seeing as there are no questions, we are at human resource assessment proposal from the People Company Consulting Group. 300. Go back. I saw. Can we go back to B? I want clarification around. Oh, sorry. Population of less than 500,000. I read too quickly. The budget impact. $30 million to be spent over the next 3 years, ending in fiscal year 2026. So again, this is a direct correlation of we're setting aside funds not just for the former First Midwest building, but on capital projects throughout the district. And this was done years ago.
Yes, sir. This was done year one of the capital improvement plan for the first 3 year financial commitment, average $10 million a year. This is a continuation of that.
C, human resource assessment proposal from the People Company Consulting Group. If we can click on that item. All right, that information is there. I know we have a individual who's present, but I know the board has reviewed it. We heard tonight the need for it. Are there any other questions related to what's being asked?
How long is this study going to take?
So Ms. Hannah's asking for the estimated timeline.
So thank you for the question, Ms. Hannah. We do have Ms. Deborah Biddle here with the People Company Consulting Group. But on the, Mr. White, if you could open for those in the audience, if you look at the proposal, there is a schedule on page 14 where this work, contingent on board approval, of course, would start in mid-February, around the week of February 20th, and would go through the month of July.
And what are they? What is this consulting going to be about?
Sure. All right. On page 3 of the proposal, if you could go to page 3, Mr. White, and I don't want to steal your thunder, but the district has identified some organizational needs within the Human Resources Department, and as we all know, the Human Resources Department impacts our most precious commodity within the district outside of the students. It's our personnel and the policies and procedures that go along with it. So we have bullet pointed needs here: performance evaluation process, personnel file review, review of industry standard competencies for effective HR operations, organizational review, background check and reference and verification process, progressive discipline termination process, and exit interviews, which is something that has come up several times. Setting of expectations, CBA is collective bargaining agreement around the staff within the HR department as they're normally collaborating with the unions. Knowledge of contract negotiation process, grievance procedures, retention strategies when we talk about district culture and its impacts, interview processes at all level, customer service, position control, and then some guidance review or creation of key categories that include FMLA requests, accommodation requests, and their criminal background check procedure as it relates to the Illinois Department of Human Rights. And also at the top of, yes, and that is the last one at the bottom of page 3. So it's really a comprehensive review of what's happening. Now, this isn't to say that the system is broken. Obviously, the district does operate, but again, HR is the face of the district. There are some things that we look to hopefully enhance throughout this review process. Mr. Figueroa and his team, we're working with Ms. Biddle's firm to identify those needs, and we're looking at this over the spring semester.
And what's the cost?
The cost is $55,000.
For how long?
For the course of the review, so between February and July, Ms. Hannah. $55,000 is identified also on page 14 underneath the schedule. Now, this is something that I put in the deputy superintendent budget request for this school year. This review and audit, and speaking with Mr. Figueroa, talking about really solidifying policies and procedures through that department in the district. So this was requested. This was not requested at $55,000, but it was requested at, I believe, $35,000. So we'll be looking to reviewing that with Ms. Polk's office and Mr. Luosa to make sure that we can get this comprehensive audit done. Again, this is very impactful for our district operations.
And with all due respect, okay, we just had a HR consulting firm here. How come they couldn't have done this?
So we did have a firm for a salary audit and review. This would be a fresh set of eyes to look at the district's day-to-day procedures.
And to put another way, they could have done it, but they would have charged us a different fee. It was outside of their scope of work.
Yep.
And I do want to commend the People Company Consulting Group, because it is a very exhaustive RFP. It was a response, right, if I'm not mistaken, Deputy Moten process. So 21 pages attachment, along with what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, when they plan to do it, and what they're identifying. So I did just want to say that is attached for the board, and it is extensive. I, for one, have been asking for something like this, and I'm excited to see it happen.
And would you please ask them to get you the history of the Hewitt company?
Okay, I will do that. Thank you for that. And I'll also make contact with Mr. Harris. I actually know him from high school, so we'll be able to get that information and confirm what he said here, but other recommendations that he might have. So we intend to make sure we get as comprehensive and as in-depth of a history of what has gone on as possible.
So does that mean you're a Waukegan grad?
No, actually, I went to Waukegan. I went to Lion School for grade school, and then went to Mother of God School, and then to Carmel.
Gotcha.
So I grew up in Waukegan on 13th Street, if y'all know where that is. And
of course, but no.
And my family, my family is the Vaughn family and the Phillips family. So if you are familiar with them, you know my people, and most of them went to either Waukegan, Zion, or North Chicago public schools.
Well, no, we're happy, and like I said, this is needed work, identifying, and that's what you heard from the community. I work for a company that's very, very large, and we do these things quite often. It's because sometimes practices become outdated,
Yes.
And it's always good to have a fresh set of eyes, and to make sure that those systems are functioning on all cylinders, because it is a very important department. So thank you for coming out this evening, and I hope that the board will support this action at our next board meeting.
All right, thank you. If you don't have any other questions, I will sit down.
Thank you. Item D, installation of refrigeration system and shelving for new service vans. Those items are there. Information is presented. We have Washington Campus Emergency Tuck Pointing. I would hope that we all support that initiative, but if we have any questions. North Elementary Furniture Purchase Revision, that has been submitted there for information. Professional Services Agreement for Maria de los Reyes. This is looking at the RFP process for our child nutrition and transportation grants. RFPs. H, bus transportation draft agreement between the district and nonprofit organizations. This agreement has been presented for information. If you've read it and have questions, or if you read it and think of questions, please send those in to Superintendent CC, myself, and Deputy Moten. And then we have item I, which is the Brookside fire alarm replacement. This is an important item that we've been looking at through the Capital Improvement Committee as well, correct, Deputy Moten?
Yes, sir, Board President, and I would like to reference the note at the bottom of public content on that item. We did discuss this in the Capital Improvement Committee, but we also discussed this being a life safety eligible project. So a life safety amendment has been filed with the regional office and State Board of Education. This project we're recommending moving forward contingent on that approval. So life safety funds can be available to cover this expenditure.
Did you all get any bid from Denny?
And we have staff. And vendors in the audience to help answer questions. So I'm gonna ask Mr. Phelps to answer that.
Okay.
I'm not sure what company would they be with?
They're over on what's that road?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we did
I
receive
see 'em.
2 bids, so I'm not sure if.
Yeah, I see one for Rolling Meadows and one from Zion.
Yes.
I was wondering about the one from Waukegan, the company that does the fire hydrants, fire extinguishers.
Oh,
here in Waukegan.
that's a very different occupation and trade. This is electricians coming in and doing wiring and devices, not the fire
Okay,
extinguishers.
I must be looking at the wrong thing.
Yeah, fire alarm replacement, item I, Ms. Hannah.
Oh, we're not on that.
Item I.
That's what I'm talking about.
So he's saying they do not the.
Oh, not the extinguisher.
Yes, ma'am. This is the actual alarm system. So
Oh,
you know.
I see. I apologize.
That's okay.
Sir.
That's
Yeah.
okay.
Forgive
No,
me. I'm sorry.
this is a good one, and to reiterate to the board why it's important and the life safety is related to when the alarms go off, being able to identify specifically where in the school the alarm is being triggered from. So right now you know it's going off, but is it in the
Yeah, I
trap or whatever, right? And so this was identified in the life safety walkthrough. Is that correct, Deputy Moten?
Yes, this was identified. Currently, the fire alarm system is operable, but it needs an upgrade. The district has upgraded other locations for addressable, as Mr. Ewing referenced, alarm systems, so that if an alarm is triggered, we know immediately where it is. And we also have instant reporting to our monitoring company.
I thought that Johnson Controls and all them, they did kind of all that stuff. But we had that work done before. Where if the alarms went off, the fire department would know it exactly in the building where. That.
So that system is a similar concept, but not the same as this. That would be alarms on equipment for critical alarms if we had failures. Boiler 1 goes down, not supplying hot water.
Right.
We'd get a notice via email to.
No, I'm talking about like if there was a fire in the building and our alarm system.
Yeah.
The fire department would be able to know exactly where the fire was.
Yeah, so that currently is not what Johnson Controls does. Our district electricians have supported that effort in several of the buildings, but the Brookside system is too large for them to tackle. So the recommendation from the operations department was to bid this out. We did have 2 bids, as I was reminded, from Contech MSI and Kraus Electrical contractors.
And to that point, Deputy Moten, we've done similar upgrades at other buildings, right? And that also is.
Yes, sir. This is one of the last one, I believe, actually the last one that needs to be addressed in this fashion. So the wiring of the devices as well as the control panels that communicate out.
So you have voted to approve upgrades, Ms. Hannah, but this one is for Brookside.
And this has nothing to do with the sprinkler system?
No.
Not the sprinkler system.
Perfect. All right. We already had Jay. Everything else has been listed for reports. Schedule of investments. We had our student activity and convenience accounts. Our treasurer's report. Facility fee waivers from July through 12/31/22 shows how much has been spent or approved by the board, how much is still outstanding. The capital improvement committee update. Been listed there.
So, Mr. Ewing, if I could jump in here quickly. I misspoke earlier regarding an update on this. There is one piece of information I would like to share with this group, and Mr. Ochoa's here. He can assist if needed. But if you look at if you could open up that attachment, Mr. White, please. So these are the capital improvements that we brought before the board last semester. This is the status of where they are in design, if they've been bid, when they're planned for recommendations, kind of like the Brookside fire alarm we just discussed, etc. If you go to slide 3, you'll notice at the top it says Johnson Controls Esser in design, and then it says domestic hot water boiler replacement at Brookside out for bid. We did want to make the board aware that we did actually have a violation on the hot water holding tank for that boiler. So the operations team replaced that boiler because of excessive leaking, but that was identified by the Illinois State Fire Marshal. That was within the scope on this line. So that part of the scope, when we bid out those services, will be removed. So that cost was approximately $43,000. One of the main reasons we went ahead and proceeded with the work, outside of it being, holding the hot water for the boiler, it also supplied hot water for the kitchen at Brookside campus. So we needed to move forward with that. But again, that $43,000 will be reduced from that project scope when it goes out to bid, and we estimated that overall project to be $400,000. So it'll be $400,000 minus the 43. So I just wanted to make the board aware of that. We will need to bring that back for a ratification action. But if there are any specific questions on that, we can help answer. Yes.
Can you go back to slide 2? You have Greenwood listed twice.
Can you scroll back, Mr. White?
One more. So you have Greenwood and then you have Greenwood. Is one of those, should that be Glenwood?
Thank you for catching that. That was an error. The first one should be Glenwood.
Okay.
So you'll notice the cluster design schools, Clark, Little Fort McCall, Oakdale. That should be Glenwood. Thank you for catching that. And then Greenwood is on the last line of that slide.
And if I'm not mistaken, I just want to call out Deputy Moulton, help with my memory, is we ended up saying that this would complete the secure vestibules at every building. Is that what this does? I just want to, or will we still have some that we need to come back and do?
So that's what this will do for the schools that haven't been complete, or the schools that don't have staff to support. For example, Brookside Washington campus has one, but Brookside campus has safety staff at the entrances. But these elementary schools and middle schools, this would complete it. The most extensive work was at the top of this slide, Hyde Park, which would require an expansion of the office space. We identified that as and actually that one's already been bid, but that's a higher price item, but we're holding on recommending that until we know the cost of the other locations to ensure we can complete them all. But this will complete all the locations, schools in the district.
And just for the public and the board, with clarity, is there some schools which you buzz in, your students may attend them, and you gain access before you actually have to be interact with staff or go into an office. So from a security standpoint, this was deemed as a priority by the committee to make sure that all of our school buildings have a secure entry and exit, right? So I think that this is a worthwhile investment and another way to show that we are addressing security concerns and improvements at each of the building sites.
And that's excellent for security, and all of this is good information. But you say you keep referencing, Mr. President, about the committee.
Mm-hmm.
The committee is just a committee.
100%.
The board, what the committee discusses, needs to be brought forward to the board.
Which is what's been done, Ms. Hannah. That's not only what this is. This has been previously discussed. Is that correct, Deputy Moulton?
Yes, sir. We brought this in the fall, Ms. Hannah.
How many months ago?
About 3 months ago. I would need to double check the specific meeting, but I believe it was in the October meeting, Ms. Hannah.
So, yeah, the point is a 100% relevant one, but the committee is just making a recommendation. When I reference the committee, it's not because they made the decision, but Mr. Riddle and myself sit on that committee. So I was just providing context into some of the thinking around these things and calling it out, because just like Ms. Hannah said, I don't want it to be feel like these decisions are made in isolation. The board still has to approve each of these, and then they also have to approve when they're bid, and then they have to approve the work. So the board does always have final authority.
And I guess I'm not going to apologize, but I will make the statement that that I am accustomed to information before everything before, okay, and even before it went to a committee. And it predates you. But what I'm saying is that the authority of the board should be number one, and should be first in line to get all information before a committee.
The committee approves the recommendations to the board, and the board can, and that process has been in place. Yes, it predates me. It's because it was the process I was initiated into on the board.
Right.
Right. The wellness policy, right? You guys develop the policy, then you bring it to the board. We're following that same, right?
But we there was an update,
Which is what's been done.
Anyway,
Are these items part of the big plan that we booked, that we got?
They are part of the
5
big
years
plan.
ago? Okay.
This is the.
It's just a continuation of
this
the
is the recommendation
10-year
from
plan.
the items on that plan.
You got it.
But we can provide it's an attachment, it's a link, and they keep the running document.
I can dig mine out if you really, really want to see the 10.
If you got it, I should have it.
Yes,
I don't
yes.
know what you're talking
It's on the district website as well.
It is on the operation page on the district website, and we are looking to revamp that as well, because we're going into year 4 of that plan. But this is recommendations from that. And I would also like to make the board aware is we're going to do this process much earlier. The last slide on that presentation discussed the Capital Improvement Committee meeting starting in February for summer of 2024. So we're still seeing lead time challenges, especially for our larger projects. We want to make sure that we can get contractors to commit, provide equipment, all the things that we need to do to make sure that we can have a successful capital project season in the summer of 2024, as opposed to waiting into the fall of 2023 and really having that summer pass us by. So I just wanted to make the board aware of that. There's a potential for you to see recommendations for summer 2024 later on this school year based on those discussions.
And I want to go back to a further conversation. It's because when the board then sees those items for 2024, and we say these are some of the things, the committee recommendation that we want to see, then those items get prioritized for the budget year 2024, right? Which is a complete 2 budget cycles away. But we are then planning and prioritizing those so we know how to fund them, how we're going to cover them, and making sure that those costs are accounted for in the future, right? That's the intent of why we do this.
That would be the intent, pre-planning, and that would be the 2024-2025 school year, FY25.
Thank you. There was one items which just legal changes, things that went into place January 1. So I would ask the board to read through those and reach out to Ms. Vanderbroek with any questions. With that, I would like a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Wozniak.
Second.
Second by Ms. Hannah. All in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.